Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Kurama and Madara were sealed inside Naruto Part 7. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
First, you have to agree to be quiet and sit back, Fugaku told Naruto firmly as he looked him in the eyes. Naruto moved around in his chair and then leaned back and nodded his head. This is going to be a lot for you, and you're going to want to interrupt a lot, but if you do, then we won't get anywhere. So just listen for now and ask questions when I'm done. Fugaku sighed and didn't know where to begin. He stood there and slowly walked around the room. He chose, we'll start here. Your real name is Naruto Uzumaki. I know that you already know this, but I'm guessing you don't know much about the Uzumaki clan itself and its bloodlines. Naruto once more nodded in silence. Many of Konoha's libraries had information about the Uzumaki, but it was mostly empty. The only thing they said was that they were destroyed in the Great Shinobi War. The Hokage should have known, but Iruka didn't know much either, and he either didn't tell the Hokage or tried to avoid the subject. I know a little about the Uzumaki clan because of the ancient Uchiha tablet that we keep hidden in the Naka shrine. The tablet talks about the origin of the ninja world, and it mentions the Uzumaki several times, in the sections that I can read, at least. From what I know, the Uzumaki clan is one of the oldest clans in the history of ninja, if not the oldest. Some of the elders interpret this as the Uzumaki were the first ninjas in the world. This caught Naruto off guard. It was the Uzumaki clan that was the oldest. He comes from a line of ninjas. I won't really get into the specifics of that, because I honestly don't know much more, Fugaku said. But the tablet distinctly says that the Uzumaki are actually distant relatives of the Senju clan, and share similar bloodline limits. What I mean by that is... In shock, Naruto jumped out of his chair and yelled, "What? I have the Senju bloodline limit? Does that mean that I'll be able to combine elements like Hinata and have stronger ninjutsu and..." The words Naruto was about to say stopped when he saw Fugaku staring him down impatiently. He knew he wasn't supposed to talk during the break, but this was fun. "No, you won't be able to combine elements like Hinata," Fugaku said after Naruto stopped talking. "Like I said, the Uzumaki and the Senju have similar bloodlines, but they're not the same. Both Uzumaki and Senju have advanced physical chakra, but they're opposite in a way. Senju's physical chakra is geared more toward battle. They can combine elements and their ninjutsu is stronger. The Uzumaki's physical chakra, how can I put this, is based more on vitality." The look on Naruto's face was blank. "Let's see." Fugaku tried to say more. "It means that your chakra is naturally more powerful. Your Uzumaki bloodline makes your chakra potent, abundant, you can regenerate chakra quickly, and it makes your life force strong. You've probably noticed by now that you can create shadow clones with relative ease. Well, that's not the case for everyone else. The Kage Bunshin technique has been declared a kinjutsu, a forbidden technique, because it drains so much chakra and can actually kill the user. Most advanced ninja wouldn't dare to make over 10, but you can make 10 without the slightest problem." He sat down in his chair and sighed. Was that it? Well-being? Strong chakra? He believed that in a year or two, he would figure out how to use his amazing power. He was used to having a lot of chakra. "Their chakra may not have been geared toward ninjutsu," Fugaku said, noting Naruto's disappointment, but that didn't mean that the Uzumaki clan wasn't feared among the lands. Just like the Uchiha and Senju, the Uzumaki was an extremely powerful clan that made them targets in the last Shinobi War. Here's why: Fuinjutsu. Fuinjutsu? Naruto asked back, not quite sure what to say. That was a type of sealing jutsu, right? Yes, Fuinjutsu, Fugaku said again and again. They used their powerful physical chakra to create special seals. The Uzumaki were the most talented at Fuinjutsu in all of the nations. Even so, Naruto wasn't impressed. How could Fuinjutsu make a clan feared and powerful? Fugaku couldn't help but laugh about that. "I've been in a battle with an expert Fuinjutsu user, and it was one of the toughest battles I've ever been in. The ninja could cast seals on the ground that made explosions bigger than the Grand Fireball technique. Every time I used fire ninjutsu against him, he could absorb it with a special seal on his hand. My biggest and best attacks were absorbed like nothing. He put a seal on one of my friends that made him freeze and unable to move, and he put a seal on another that made him attack his friends. Fuinjutsu has almost unlimited power, Fugaku said in the end. The Uzumaki were famous for having mastered the art. It would be smart for you to study any Fuinjutsu scrolls you can find before I show you your parents' house. Naruto shrugged, still feeling a little let down by this news. He didn't know much about Fuinjutsu, but how could it be similar to the Sharingan? How could it be similar to being able to see through genjutsu and read body movements? How could it be similar to having very strong ninjutsu and combining elements? Your mother was named Kushina Uzumaki, Fugaku said, his eyes looking far away as if he were picturing her. Some people thought she was the last of the Uzumaki. To say the least, she was a strange woman. She was very good at Fuinjutsu, and... Wait, Naruto cut in, making Fugaku irritated. Don't get Naruto wrong. He needed to know his parents' names. But Fugaku had said she was the last Uzumaki. So neither of my parents were from the Uzumaki clan. So what does my last name mean? Shouldn't I take my dad's last name? There was a pause, and Fugaku let Naruto know that he was annoyed. I'll be there in a minute. Naruto baka. Don't you want to know more about your mother? He asked in jest. He shook his head. If his dad was from a different clan, then he might have gotten a different bloodline limit too. What if his dad had some cool kekkei genkei, like being able to turn his body into steel or being stronger than humans? What bloodline limit did I get from my dad? Naruto asked with excitement, his mind spinning with all the possibilities. He sighed and was about to answer when he had an idea. You don't really know how bloodline limits work, do you? He asked slowly, sure that he got it right. I know how babies are made, if that's what you're asking, Naruto said with a roll of the eyes. Fugaku couldn't help but hit him on the head with his palm. This kid. That's not what I mean, he said. What would happen if your mom was a Hyuga and your dad was a Uchiha? After giving it some thought for a moment, Naruto had an idea. I'd have a Sharingan that could see for miles and inside out. Wrong, he just said. That's not how kekkei genkei work. Fugaku resisted the urge to facepalm again. Didn't the academy teach kids anything these days? Could you tell me something about yin and yang chakra? I should have asked you that at the beginning. He brushed it off as if he had known it for years, even though he had just learned it from the Hokage this morning. Yeah, yin chakra is spiritual chakra, used for ninjutsu and other things, and yang chakra is physical chakra, he said. This made Fugaku smile. At least he didn't have to start from scratch, right? What is a kekkei genkei, too? Once again, Naruto had to think before he spoke. A bloodline limit. It's an advanced form of yin or yang chakra. He began, trying to figure out how to say it after learning something new from the Hokage today. They have a stronger yin chakra than us, which gives them the Sharingan, and they have a stronger yang chakra than us, which gives them stronger ninjutsu and combined elements. For the most part, you're right, Fugaku said as he went on. Kekkei genkei is a special improvement in physical or spiritual chakra. Some clans' genes pass down these abilities. When a spiritual chakra is very advanced, it almost always leads to a dojutsu. When your physical chakra is advanced, your chakra nature is usually also advanced. This is not the same as hajutsu, which are secret skills that some clans, like the Nara or Aburame, have. You might be able to learn how to control bugs like an Aburame or change your shadow like a Nara, but the clan keeps those jutsus a secret. Anyway, to sum up, some kekkei genkei can't mix and some can. For example, if your parents were Hyuga and Uchiha, you'd have a 50% chance of having either a Sharingan or a Byakugan, but never both. Similarly, if your dad had an ice release kekkei genkei and your mom had a lava release one, you could only have one of them. However, he went on, spiritual and physical bloodline limits can mix. If your dad had the Byakugan and your mom had a bloodline limit that let lava out, you would have both. Some of our rare spiritual chakra kekkei genkei, like the Hyuga's Byakugan, have been stolen by Kumo in the past. For this reason, dojutsu, or spiritual kekkei genkei, are much less common and can be combined with a lot of different physical chakra bloodline limits. I think you remember what happened with Hinata. Naruto tried to take it all in. So then, he asked after giving it some thought, what if a Uchiha and a Senju had a child? That's the limit of the yin and yang bloodline, right? Would the child have a Sharingan and be able to do all ninjutsu? That would be great. The best person for both your physical and spiritual chakras. He had to stop and think about it. Yes, he finally said, that could happen, but he then stopped talking, leaving Naruto to wonder what else he was going to say. The Senju and Uchiha clans have been enemies for years, he tried to explain. Because you're young, Naruto, you don't fully understand it, but their rivalry made ours with the Hyuga look weak. We used to kill each other all the time before Konoha was made. No one from the Uchiha clan would even think about marrying someone from the Senju clan because it was against the laws of both clans. I don't think it needed to be a law at all because we hated each other so much. Maybe there was one case. He went off on another tangent, which made Naruto a little tense. When Fugaku didn't say anything for almost 30 seconds, Naruto had to clear his throat to remind him that he was there. She said, sorry, but she was still thinking. It's hard to remember this because the Senju's disappearance made me forget. In one case, I think a Uchiha and a Senju fell in love and tried to get married. Yes, I'm beginning to remember. Somehow or another, the Senju man and the Uchiha woman fell in love, but they couldn't get married because it was against clan rules. As I wasn't the head of the clan at the time and was still young, I don't remember what really happened before the Senju disappeared. Even the man she wanted to marry her. I really think she was pregnant, even though it's hard to believe. So, is the woman still alive? No, Naruto wasn't interested at first. The Senju haven't been gone for that long, right? Did she have a child? He would have the coolest bloodline limit ever? It was sad for Fugaku to shake his head. The past clan head told me that she got depressed and left the village with her child. She killed herself in the end, I think. Naruto sighed and leaned back in his chair. The Uchiha and the Senju could have merged to make someone with an amazing bloodline, but they never did because of rivalries. That was silly. And the one time it did happen, the husband and the rest of the Senju disappeared, and the woman killed herself from depression. But there was still a chance. Hinata was a Senju. If she married someone from the Uchiha clan. He didn't know why, but all of a sudden he didn't like that idea. It wasn't because of clan rivalries. It was because Hinata would be married and wouldn't be able to have as much fun with him. Why did that bother him? Because she was one of his best friends, he felt safe around her. Now, about your dad's bloodline limit, Fugaku went on after the short break. It's less of a bloodline and more of a technique. People in his time knew him as the fastest ninja. There was something about him that we call a swift technique. Swift wasn't a very well-known bloodline, but your dad was able to use his chakra to use a shunshin in amazing ways, which is how the bloodline Swift came to be. He was thought to be the fastest ninja who ever lived when he used that and his most famous move together. He couldn't believe it. His father was the fastest ninja who had ever lived, faster than Shisui. It made him wonder how that could be possible. Yes, faster than Shisui, Fugaku said with a nod. Shisui is actually as fast and well-known as he is because he learned how to copy your dad's method, Swift. Do you know what the Shunshin technique is? Sad, Naruto shook his head. Shisui hasn't taught me yet. Well, Fugaku said, the Shunshin lets its owner move very quickly, but only in a straight line. When you use the technique, you can run forward so quickly that it almost looks like you're teleporting. But Swift doesn't follow this rule. Some people knew your dad could use a Shunshin without having to run in a straight line. This made his taijutsu famed. After years of practice, Shisui was able to do something similar, though not as well. This was possible for your dad because he had a certain chakra, but Shisui could do it with his Sharingan. If you ask him, he can explain it better. However, the Yondaime's speed came from his physical chakra, and, as we already know, you've inherited your mother's powerful Uzumaki chakra, and two physical chakras cannot mix. Your father's Swift chakra was lost. He sighed again, this time with a little irritation. He had wanted to learn the Shunshin to be as fast as Shisui ever since they met. He just found out that he wouldn't be able to use the Shunshin like Shisui even if he learned it. This is because he didn't get his father's physical chakra and didn't have a Sharingan. But Fugaku said that Shisui was the only one who knew how to use his eyes to copy Swift, even if he did have a Sharingan. All of a sudden, Naruto's mind started to click, putting together what he knew. Furuku told him that his father was the fastest ninja in the world. Naruto was a big reader, so he knew for sure that the fourth Hokage was the fastest ninja in the world before he died killing the Kyuubi. Naruto asked, Fugaku, after he thought about how to say what he wanted to say. Was my father even faster than the fourth Hokage? Fugaku fought the urge to smile that was starting to show on his face. He only answered, no, which made Naruto sigh in frustration. But Fugaku had just said that his dad was the fastest ninja in the world. Your father was the fourth Hokage. The fastest ninja in the world, and one of the most powerful. The hero of Konoha. The Yellow Flash, who gave his life to protect the village by killing off the mighty Kyuubi. You are his son, Naruto. A few days later a voice behind her said, close your eyes, Hinata. And when you wake up, I'll be gone. She kept crying and slowly closed her eyes like he told her to. She did not wish to sleep, instead, she wished to stay awake and escape with him. She had no choice, though. I'll come back for you. That's my new promise. She asked in a whisper, how can I trust you? You broke your promise. Keep quiet. Her breath hit her neck, and she could feel it. You can't. Be strong, Hinata. She looked through her tears and squinted her eyes shut, holding her breath as she tried not to cry. He said I should try to be strong, so I am. All of a sudden. Darkness. There were tears in Hinata's eyes as she sat up in bed and grabbed her sheets. She had seen this dream about 5 times, and it didn't get better for her. He would always leave her, no matter what she said or how she said it. But why? Why did he have a Sharingan? Why was she having these dreams or seeing these things? She wiped her tears away with her sleeve and looked over at the soft fox doll next to her. It was a gift from the orphanage that she had kept with her since she left. She slowly got a smile on her face as she thought about the carefree times she had with Naruto. A lot had happened between then and now. They were split up into different clans, but she was back sleeping in her own house in the Senju compound and seeing Naruto every day, just like before. Everything would be great, except for the dream she kept having. Something about it made me remember that nothing lasts. She told everyone about it. Naruto knew about it every time she had it. He was mad at her and told her he would never do something like that. That was his way of making his point. You think I would kill someone? You think I would leave you in Konoha? She thought it was a silly idea, but no matter how hard Naruto and she both tried to believe him, she would have this dream again as soon as she thought everything was going to be okay. As if it were telling her about something that was going to happen. Hinata's head snapped up when she heard the sound of a door creaking open in the distance. Her house was old, a Senju house, which means it was one of the oldest in all of Konoha, and the wood would creak every time she walked down the halls or opened doors. She meant to oil the hinges but hadn't had a chance to do it yet. But why would someone open the door now? It was late at night. Who could it be? She slowly got out of bed while still wearing her pajamas. She should have been scared, but for some reason, she was very sure of herself. She felt strong, if that's even possible. She felt like her chakra was strong, and her feet moved with power and grace that she wasn't sure she had before. She seemed like she could beat anyone. As she left her room and walked down the hall, she was about to turn on the lights when she saw the outline of a figure far away. The person wasn't clear until it moved in front of a beam of moonlight coming in through one of the windows. She squinted to see who it was. The person in the middle of her hallway looked more like a man than a boy. He had short, dark hair, and what looked like a cloth over his eyes made him blind. He was dressed in loose robes that made me think of someone I knew. I've come for you, Hinata-sama, a dark, cold voice said. It was quiet but clear. I've been sent here to kill you. Hinata let out a gasp from shock over 2 things. She was obviously shocked by the message he sent, but what shocked her even more was that she recognized the voice. It was Neji. He cracked a small smile on his face. He slowly walked toward Hinata. His steps were sure, and even though the floor was old and creaky, they were quiet. She tried to take a step back, but when she looked down, she was shocked to see that her feet were stuck to the ground. It wasn't just a phrase. Ice was covering her feet, and she couldn't get out of them no matter how hard she tried. Neji told Hinata, "Don't worry," when he finally got to her. He was in front of her about 5 feet away. Hinata could feel his chakra from this spot for some reason, and she was shocked by how strong it felt. With all the faith she had in her own skills, she knew deep down that she would lose if she fought Neji. Neji took another step forward and said, "I'm not going to hurt you." She could feel his eyes looking right into her soul, even though the cloth was over them. "I want to, more than anything else. I want to kill you right now." But I can't, even though I was ordered. I made a promise to a certain someone. Naruto saved your life today, Hinata. Hinata was really lost. What was going on? Neji said he was sent to kill her, so why was he here? Just what was this promise he was making? How did Naruto keep her alive? Neji, she stumbled as she tried to understand better, what's going on? He let out a low, HN, as if the question wasn't important enough to be answered. He was about to say something when he quickly turned his head to the left and stared at the wall. Or maybe through the wall. He turned back to her and said, "You have a very interesting visitor today. I'm afraid I can stay no longer. Tell Naruto that I'll see him again." After that, Neji turned around and walked back down the hall. Just as quickly as he was gone, Hinata noticed that her feet were no longer tied together. What was that all about? Then she remembered that Neji had told her about a visitor. She was about to go back to bed and think about everything. She crossed the hallway, went down the stairs, and turned left to go to her garden. There was a reason she was going there, but she just knew it was the right place for her. She slid the door open when she got to the garden porch. The full moon lit up all the plants in a way that seemed almost unrealistic. She had to take a moment to be amazed and look around. It was so lovely in her garden. It had beautiful trees, bushes, and almost 300 different kinds of flowers. When she looked up, she saw a shadowy figure standing in the middle of the grassy clearing. He had his back to her and was looking up at the moon. His hair was lightly blowing in the wind. As she moved toward the figure, she felt like the chakra coming from it was so welcoming and familiar. When she saw the blonde hair, it made her eyes widen. She was still a ways away, but she ran quickly toward him because she wanted to be held by him and tell him about her strange meeting with Neji. He quickly turned his head away from the moon and looked into her eyes, making her stand still like a statue. The Sharingan. It's been a while, Hinata-chan, Naruto said, his voice lower than usual, darker, and lacking in warmth. Besides the way his red eyes looked right into hers, he looked so different that she could actually see him. There was no longer any Uchiha tunic on him, and he was taller and his hair was longer. What was going on? She said, Naruto, but she didn't know what to say. Who is the Sharingan? What did this mean? Even so, she wanted to run toward him, but she couldn't move again, and this time she wasn't sure why. Naruto was standing in front of her, but all of a sudden, he was standing right next to her, shoulder to shoulder, with their backs to each other. Naruto put his hand on her shoulder and asked, "I hope Neji didn't hurt you." She heard every word. It was hard to hear Hinata say, "Yes," which made Naruto smile. Turning around, he stood behind her and lightly wrapped his arms around her stomach. He then put his chin on her shoulder so that their cheeks were almost touching. Hinata could tell her face was getting hot. This hug. She still couldn't move, but even if she could. "Close your eyes," Naruto said in a low voice. Somewhere in Hinata's mind, a warning bell went off. It was that phrase that made her realize all of a sudden that she had to close her eyes. Just as her eyes closed for the last time, she saw and felt the world around her slowly fade away. It was the last sound she heard before everything went dark. "I've kept my promise, Hinata-chan. Now say goodbye to Konoha. You're coming with me." Senju Compound. Early morning. Hinata got out of bed and gasped for air for what seemed like the second time that same night. What had happened? Was it all a dream? A dream inside a dream? When she looked at the clock, she let out a gasp of surprise. It was 7:25, soon. Naruto and Sasuke would be over for breakfast before a team meeting. She jumped out of bed quickly and started to quickly brush the covers over the bed to make it as soon as possible. She was thinking about 1.5 million things at the moment. In one half of her mind, she was trying to remember the dream she had just had and what it meant. In the other half, she was thinking about the fact that she only had 5 minutes to get dressed and make breakfast. Her team was going to be given their first mission today. Everyone was so happy. Naruto and Sasuke were happy to accept Hinata's shy offer to come over for breakfast before the battle yesterday. In the middle of a thought, she took off her pajamas and was putting on her training bra. Naruto did everything he could to help her become the person she used to be. He told her that now that the Hyuga was over, there was no reason they shouldn't laugh together all the time, hang out, and play jokes on other people. She smiled as she thought of her blonde best friend. He loved her very much, she cared a lot about him. She knew that with his and Sasuke's help, she could get back to being herself. even though her past was very complicated and hard. It would be like old times when she laughed with him. They had a lot of time. They would train together and go on missions together. Or would they? She kept thinking about the dream. Naruto wouldn't leave her, so why on earth did she just have another real dream? Neji was sent to kill her? Why did Naruto come back for her? It was all so hard for her to understand that it hurt to think about it. It was funny to watch her hop around on one foot while trying to fit the other in as she stood up and started putting on her socks. Naruto yelled, "Ohayu, Hinata-chan," as he broke through the door with a huge grin on his face. "Sasuke and I came a little early, and you weren't in the kitchen so." When Naruto opened his eyes to see what was going on, he slowly lost his train of thought. There was nothing but Hinata's underwear between them, about 2 feet away. He couldn't help but look everywhere. He had never seen Hinata act like this before. When he got to her feet, he saw that she had at least one sock on. After 15 minutes, Hinata's kitchen in his chair, Naruto leaned back in anger. On the other side of him, Sasuke was still laughing non-stop after about 5 minutes. Naruto had a big bruise on his cheek from when Hinata asked him to leave her room while she changed, in the form of her foot hitting his face hard while she screamed and him flying out into the hallway and hitting the wall hard with his head. Hinata went over to the table and put a plate of food in front of her 2 guests. She probably said sorry for the 10th time for being so angry. She was still a little red on her face from blushing. As Sasuke began to laugh again, she quickly turned away to get her own plate. Both Naruto and Hinata had a little red on their faces. He didn't think it was that big of a deal at first. Hinata was his friend, and he had just seen her in her underwear. That was it. What was different? He always saw Sasuke naked in the saunas with him. They were both his friends. Today, Naruto found out the difference. There was no doubt that Hinata was more womanly than Naruto remembered. He shook his head to clear his mind, and his face turned a little red again. He found out a few days ago that his father was the Yondaime. He was still shocked. The fact that his father was the 4th Hokage, the world's fastest man, Konoha's hero, and the only person who could beat the 9-tailed fox. What an amazing thing. His friends were also happy for him. He was able to tell them before the Hokage cut them off to talk to Naruto. It seemed like Naruto's family history was a secret that only a few people knew. He wanted to tell everyone in the village that he was the son of the former Hokage, but he couldn't. He would have told everyone would love him. It looks like not. The Hokage said that more people would hate him. The Yondaime seemed to have had a lot of enemies, and Naruto's heritage shouldn't be known to the public until he was stronger, in case enemy ninja tried to get revenge on him. Before the Hokage used Hinata as an example, Naruto was still not sure. "Look at your friend, Lady Hinata," Sarutobi said. Because people knew of her heritage, enemy ninja in the village managed to slip into the night and tried to kidnap her. They almost succeeded too. If people knew about your heritage, it's easy to assume that there would have been multiple assassination attempts on your life, assuming the first ones hadn't succeeded. Naruto himself would have liked to know more about his dad, though. At least then he would be able to handle the mean villagers better. He smiled as he thought about how the villagers would react when he told them about his family history. All the people who had hurt him would know that they had hurt the heir to the Yondaime. He was the heir, after all. The Yondaime had lived in a certain part of Konoha, which the Hokage took him to. Naruto thought there would be a big clan compound like the Senju one, but it turned out that his dad was the only Namikaze in the village. He had seen his dad's personal library, which had more scrolls than he could have imagined. He loved to read so much that he couldn't wait to spend hours and hours reading everything to find out more about Fuinjutsu and why his parents were so strong. But not today. It was likely that his team would be given their first mission today. He was so happy. His job as a ninja had finally begun. He thought for a moment about what the voice in the back of his mind had said about everything. The voice hadn't been heard in a long time, since he turned into a genin, in fact. That voice might have been the stress he was feeling, but now that he was a genin, it was gone. When Hinata sat down with Naruto and Sasuke, he felt his cheeks get hot again. The 3 of them quickly said, "Itadakimasu," and started to eat. They were excited to go on their first mission. The Hokage monument, there has to be another way. While listening to Itachi's cries, Sarutobi closed his eyes in silent pain. Itachi had come to him and begged for a different outcome than the one he had been given before. To get rid of a whole clan. Sarutobi shook his head in disgust. But he had no chance at all, just like Itachi did. He had met with Fugaku in person to try to persuade him not to try any kind of coup d'état, but Fugaku was set on doing what was right. He knew that the Uchiha were being hidden, and what was worse, Fugaku knew that the Senju incident was planned by Konoha's council. Itachi must have told him, but Sarutobi didn't care. The boy was already being used too much as an agent for the Uchiha and a KGB spy. "Tell me," Itachi begged as he stood behind the Hokage. "Why can't I just murder the council? Why can't I rid the village of the corruption from its roots?" Sarutobi let out a sigh and opened his eyes to see the whole village. The roots of corruption run deep in this village, just like the other 4 villages. And in order to destroy the roots of the tree, you would have to destroy tree itself entirely. Itachi didn't say anything because he wanted Sarutobi to explain more. Sarutobi asked himself in a roundabout way, "Who is this council? Can we name one person as the cause of corruption? To be honest, I don't even know who is on Konoha's corrupt council. I only know this because Danzo tells me. Danzo and I may not always agree, but that man loves Konoha as much as I do, and he respects the title of Hokage. He tells me everything he knows because he respects my title, and nothing else. This group of people who told you to kill the Uchiha wouldn't be so stupid as to tell anyone who they are. And I would have to be on the list of people you have to kill in order to get rid of the council. Every single clan head, ninja or not. That would cause the village to fall apart, or at least make it easy for the enemy to take over. A tree without roots is dead." Itachi shook his head angrily. He had hoped that the Hokage would be able to tell him who in fact is a part of the corrupt council. Itachi, as the head of the Anbu, reports directly to the Hokage only. It was the Hokage who told him that he would have to kill the Uchiha, and he had just learned now that the Hokage got all of his information from Danzo. He was stuck with an impossible choice: kill his own clan to save Konoha, or save his clan and destroy Konoha. If he simply didn't listen, or even joined in the Uchiha's rebellion, there would be enough disarray in the village for it to weaken and be attacked by outside forces. Not only that, but without support, the Uchiha would be wiped out in the end. If he decided to kill the council, like the Hokage said, he would have to kill every single clan head, ninja or not, including Danzo and the Hokage himself. The Uchiha would forsake him, he'd be killed or exiled, and Konoha would be without a head, leaderless, and just as vulnerable as before, if not more. The best outcome, which seemed to be the worst option, was to kill his clan, and allow Konoha to live on for a little longer. As much as he loved his clan, he couldn't let the village fall because of him. He couldn't let hundreds of thousands of women and children be killed by invading forces because of him. He couldn't risk starting another big ninja war. He had to do it. Every adult Uchiha had been at the most recent clan meeting, and they all agreed with the coup. It wouldn't be as easy as getting rid of the clan leaders, though. The Hokage looked at Itachi with worried eyes as he finally said, "I have a plan." Kiri Kimimaro sat shirtless in a forest clearing, meditating on what was soon to come. He was almost giddy with excitement. After weeks of searching, he had found trace of Zabuza again, and he was positive that come noon, he would face the rogue ninja in battle. This would be a test of his skills, and he could barely wait. He had spent the past few years of his life training with deadly S-rank ninja, and nearly all of the time he was easily defeated. He was considered the weakest captain, but that made sense. He was 13 years old, and some of the other captains were already S-rank before he was even born. Experience was a huge factor in skill level, but after years of training under only the best, Kimimaro wasn't the weak link anymore. With his newest jutsu, he could hold his own against Orochimaru and his giant snake summons, and with his speed, he could keep up with Kakuzu and even Deidara. It wasn't uncommon for him to win some friendly training spars here and there among captains. But sparring was just practice. If it came down to it, the other captains would be able to kill him in a real fight because they've had years to perfect killing arts and have killed many more ninja than he had. But his time would come, soon. He'd be the top captain of Akatsuki and the others would be too old to fight. He was excited to finally test his skills against a strong opponent. It made him a little uncomfortable that he had to kill a fellow ninja of Kiri, especially one of the famous and loved swordsmen, but he had given Zabuza the chance to join him. Akatsuki was growing quickly, and Yahiko didn't have time to personally negotiate with high-level ninja who turned down his invitation. Kakuzu made it official that high-level criminals who refused would be killed and turned in for a big reward. He wouldn't want to ruin his big day by pulling a muscle in the middle of a fight, so he didn't do it right away. Kimimaro stood up and started to stretch in different ways that Yahiko had shown him. These moves helped him become more flexible, and while some might think it's pointless, Kimimaro's best skill was taijutsu, and being flexible really helped him in battle. About 5 minutes into his peaceful stretch, someone walked up to him holding a flower basket. She was young, with dark brown hair, and she didn't look much older than him. In fact, he probably thought she was younger. He smiled at her when she came up to him. "Good morning," he greeted, bringing his palms to his toes in a stretch. Suddenly, an idea came to his mind. He stood up and looked her over again. She seemed to be collecting flowers in her basket, but she could probably help me warm up. You wouldn't happen to be a shinobi, would you? The girl tensed up and dropped her basket, as if she had been caught stealing. In an instant, a thin needle appeared in her hand, and she charged at him, swinging her hand forward with deadly speed. She was definitely trying to kill him. Kimimaro grabbed her wrist while she was in the air, with the needle in her hands just inches from his unfazed smile. The girl looked shocked at how fast he was going, which made him smile even bigger with a hint of pride. "I'll take that as a yes." Then Kimimaro let go of her wrist and jumped back a few meters into a defensive stance. "Would you like to spar with me? Before I do something, I need to warm up. A quick spar would be great." The girl in front of him was tense and quiet, as if she didn't believe him. She gave him a mean look for a moment and then said, "You know I'm a ninja. I'm not going to let you live with that." There was something wrong with being a ninja? Kimimaro frowned. He was about to say something when he realized it didn't matter. If she was trying to kill him, it would make the fight more interesting anyway. With a flick of her wrist, the girl fired those thin needles at him, proving her point. He leaned back, showing off his flexibility, with his feet still and his back parallel to the ground, letting the needles fly over him. By the time he stood up, she was a few feet in front of him, raising her fist to punch him. To his trained eyes, she looked like she was moving through quicksand. He was used to Raizo's speed in Kinjutsu and dodging dozens of Sasori's puppets at the same time. This girl was different. He let her hit him anyway, just for fun. Her fist hit his chest, and to both of their shock and delight, it stopped dead in its tracks, like she had just punched the trunk of a tree. He smiled as he heard her gasp and saw her eyes start to water. Before battles, he always grew a layer of bone under his skin that was stronger than steel. If she hadn't covered her fists in chakra, he was sure that almost all of her bones would have broken right then and there. The girl pulled back her other hand, which had another needle in it, and tried to stab him, but he hit her wrist with it like an annoying bug and then kicked her in the chest, sending her flying through the clearing until she hit a tree. Kimimaro frowned, afraid that he had killed her by accident. He sighed with relief when she stood up again, a line of blood coming from her mouth. He thought she was pretty weak and too sure of herself. Maybe her speed could beat a weaker ninja, but he had learned the hard way that you should never charge into close quarters with a ninja whose skill level you don't know. If they were stronger than you, like he was to her, they could kill you before the battle even began. It's better to test their skills from a distance, so you can run away if you're completely outmatched. While he was thinking, the girl was quickly going through some hand seals. She was going so fast that he could only pick out a few of them before she finished a unique seal he had never seen before. Suddenly, thousands of tiny needles made of what looked like water appeared above him and were all aimed at him. But before they could do anything, a big spear of ice rose from the ground a few feet in front of him and was ready to arrow him. He jumped to the side to avoid the ice spear, but grinned as the floating needles started to speed toward him while he was in the air and couldn't avoid them. His attacker didn't know that the needles would probably have bounced off of him because he had a layer of bone under his skin, but he decided to go on the attack anyway because it was his warm-up. Mid-air shunshuns were hard, but at his level, he could do one without thinking. When he used the technique, his speed changed right away, and he sped forward while everything else moved slowly until he was right in front of his attacker. And then Kimimaro was back in front of her, smiling. It looked like he had been in the air briefly. The ninja's face showed worry as he went through some complicated taijutsu forms for about 20 seconds. He was impressed that she was able to block or avoid almost all of his attacks. She did manage to counter a few times, but he easily brushed them off. Things were about to get interesting when his opponent jumped backward, putting some space between them. She was probably going to use her strange ice ninjutsu again, but he wouldn't let her. He was ready to stop the battle before he killed the girl by accident. As soon as she landed, Haku looked at her opponent and thought of a jutsu that could kill him. She was shocked that the boy, who was only a year older than her, was such a tough opponent. Her attacks didn't seem to hurt him, and it was clear that her taijutsu skills were much lower than his. She needed to end the battle quickly so she could get away and warn Zabuza. She would have to use her ice mirrors in. The boy with white hair suddenly raised his hand, and a dark purple chakra covered it. It was so strong and clear that it almost looked like his hand was on fire. Before she could finish sealing her own hands, she heard a loud rumble below her, which made her look down at her feet. It was too late. Suddenly, the ground seemed to explode, and a huge skeletal hand and arm jumped out and grabbed her. The hand was big enough to hold her up in the air as if she didn't weigh anything, and she felt scared when she realized she couldn't use a kawarimi. She was stuck. She couldn't take her eyes off the boy on the ground who was holding up his own purple flamed fist in the air, right next to the huge bone arm. Was this a summons? Was he controlling the hand? The boy's fist got tighter, and just as she thought, the skeletal hand around her got tighter too, making it impossible to breathe. Stars burst in front of her eyes, and she felt like she was going to be squished like a bug. No matter how hard she tried to fight, the hand kept closing on her, and she couldn't get away. She thought she was going to break in half, but then the boy flicked his wrist and the big hand did the same thing, sending her flying through the air and hitting a tree. She gasped for air as more pain ran through her body and her vision started to return. She looked up and saw the boy smiling down at her. "Thanks for the spar," he said, rolling his neck as if what he had just done didn't take any effort. She had no doubt that he could have easily killed her if he wanted to. "Who are you?" She finally got a breath out, but her lungs hurt. How could he be so strong that all of her skills seemed weak in comparison? That sly grin on his face as he looked down at her, Kimimaro Kagaya, the second captain of Akatsuki. As he snapped his fingers, a dark robe appeared out of a cloud of smoke in front of him. Haku looked at the robe and saw the clear red clouds on it, which told her that the person standing in front of her was a real captain. She couldn't believe it. Why would a captain be walking through the woods? Why would she? She had been hit in the head by a tree, but when she finally remembered where she had heard the name, she was shocked. Zabuza had said that a Kagaya had offered him to join Akatsuki. If this was that same Kagaya, he would only be back here to kill Zabuza. When Kimimaro found out for herself, she said, "I'm here to kill a certain someone. You wouldn't happen to know a man named Zabuza, would you? He's a known criminal from around the world who hangs out in this area, and it's been really hard to find him again." Thump. When Kimimaro threw his left arm up in the air, it hit a huge blade and stopped just in time, cutting off Haku's head. It was clear that Zabuza had arrived. "I'm right here." Zabuza growled behind Kimimaro while holding his long blade as casually as he could. He had hoped to behead the Akatsuki while his guard was down, but it didn't look like that would work. Plus, the boy was blocking the blade with his forearm. Bone. It had to be the boy's amazing bone jutsu. Before Zabuza could say anything else, the captain vanished. He reappeared in the clearing a few meters behind Zabuza, smiling widely and waving his hands around as if he were about to give a big speech. "Gobble up Momochi. Hey, it's great to see you again," the boy yelled out in the clearing. "I'm sorry I had to look for you twice, but I've finally found you. Hi, my name is Kimimaro," the boy said. "Through Akatsuki, the world's largest and fastest growing ninja force, the Amikage has kindly forgiven you for what you did in the past. Since you turned down his offer, I've been sent here to get your reward." The boy's left hand suddenly erupted in a dark purple flame like chakra. Haku's eyes grew wide as she realized what was about to happen. But before she could warn Zabuza, the boy threw his hand forward, causing the ground to rumble just before it exploded. A huge skeletal hand and arm appeared, still going at a crazy fast speed, as if a demon from hell were reaching out of the ground to grab him. He only had a split second to decide what to do. He could try to avoid it or use a kawarimi, but either way, the hand would kill or capture Haku. Zabuza grimaced. This ninja was clearly stronger than him. He could feel it. He had hoped that by training Haku enough, they could beat him together, but now Haku was barely standing, having already been defeated. He raised his trusted legendary sword and put chakra in his feet, ready to push the hand away. This was it, his last battle. Boom! The giant arm was smashed into the ground by Kisami's booming strike, which stopped Samahata in its tracks. The bone cracked in several places before exploding into purple chakra fragments. Zabuza was shocked when his former partner stood between him and the Akatsuki captain. Suddenly, in a shimmer of mist, Mangetsu Hazuka appeared next to him, holding his legendary sword Haramekure, which could change its shape into any shape. Even though Zabuza was filled with confidence, the Akatsuki boy seemed at least amused. Whoever this boy was, he wasn't strong enough to face 3 swordsmen of the mist. The boy seemed to be in a hurry this time, unlike before. Zabuza-san, Mangetsu said in a worried voice. We don't have time, we have to get out. The earth cracked open again, this time right next to Kisame, who was standing in front of Zabuza and the others. Kisame couldn't move in time, so the giant bone hand quickly swatted him away. He avoided getting hurt by blocking it with Samahata, which showed that the Akatsuki was now standing with his finger pointed at Mangetsu and his right hand shaped like a gun. His left hand was still red and held out to the side, controlling the bigger bone hand. A tiny bone appeared at the tip of his finger and shot out, twirling through the air at much faster speeds than the giant hand. Before Mangetsu could blink, the small piece of bone went through his head and into the tree behind him, leaving a bigger hole in the middle of his forehead about the size of an apple. By the time Kisame hit the ground after being knocked over, Kimimaro had both hands raised and his left hand was no longer red. He yelled with his fingers pointed forward. Teshi Sente. This time, little bones showed up at the tips of all of his fingers. Zabuza knew what was going to happen next and tried to protect himself by moving his sword up in front of him. He wasn't going to make it in time, though, because the bones flew out of the Akatsuki's hand and strayed toward him. Along with the sudden frost, ice quickly formed in front of him until a half-dome of solid ice covered all 3 of them. Clink. Right after that, clinking sounds filled the air as the bones hit Haku's dome and bounced off to the side. Surprisingly, there weren't just 10 bones clinking. Hundreds of them were hitting them all at once. We have to get out of here, Mangetsu said. Haku gasped, thinking the man was dead, but as he spoke, the hole in his head filled with water and turned back to his normal skin color. It was the hydrification technique, a famous move perfected by the Hazuka clan. Kisame will distract the Akatsuki captain while we escape. The captain almost killed them all in less than a second. Unlike Mangetsu, he and Haku wouldn't be able to live after having hundreds of bones fly through them. Zabuza wanted to ask the 2 swordsmen how they found him or where they had been, but it wasn't the right time. Without thinking, the 3 of them jumped backwards and ran into the trees. Behind them, they heard the earth groan, and another huge skeleton hand shot out of the ground. But, just like the first time, Kisame was able to block it with Samahata, which cracked the forearm and sent purple chakra flying all over the arm. Kimimaro frowned at the sudden bad luck. He had just spent weeks chasing Zabuza, and now he was running away again. On top of that, 2 swordsmen of the mist who were supposed to be dead showed up in front of him. He had a feeling that he wouldn't be able to catch up to his target with the legendary Kisame in the way. He would have to deal with the crazy shark ninja first. He had his eyes fixed on Kisame, who was taking apart the rest of Samahata. He took off his Akatsuki robe and was only wearing dark purple pants and sandals. Kimimaro was very angry. After an hour, Kimimaro slowly walked over to Kisame, who was bleeding and struggling to stand. His great sword, Samahata, shook quietly next to him. Kisame was much stronger than Kimimaro had thought. For a moment, he wondered how many other captains were weaker than Kisame. But not him. His attacks weren't based only on ninjutsu, but also on taijutsu, which let him get around Samahata's amazing chakra-eating ability. In the end, he had to go all out. Kisame wasn't an ordinary A-ranked shinobi. He knew now that he was a deadly S-ranked one, which he should have known from the start. You know, Kimimaro said, hiding his tired face behind a smile. You do well in Akatsuki, and I don't think I ever invited you. Yahiko thought I would kill Zabuza today, but if I can make it back with you, at least. Bah. Do not fool yourself. With the first word of his grunt, Kisame spat blood. The biggest war in our history is about to start, and it has nothing to do with you and your Akatsuki. Did he not know about anything else that was going on? Kimimaro was really confused. Tell me, Captain, Kisame went on. Would you beat this leader of yours, the Amikage, if all of your captains fought against him? Kimimaro thought about it for a moment. Yahiko was very strong, but he couldn't beat any of the S-ranked captains, like Raizo, Sasori, Kakuzu, or Orochimaru. Yes, we would beat him, but... You know about the 7 swordsmen of the mist? Then he isn't the strongest force there is, Kisame said, still breathing heavily on the ground. Did Kimimaro say yes? Everyone from Kiri knew about the 7 swordsmen. Before something happened, you broke up, you were Kiri's shining pride. I don't remember. I believe I was with Yahiko at that time. Kisame smiled painfully and said, yes, something did happen. We tried to kill the Mizukage. We failed. It is their duty to protect Kiri and the Mizukage, but there was something strange going on behind their backs. The Mizukage wasn't acting the same as he did before. The council was making laws to wipe out all bloodlines in Kiri, but the Mizukage didn't seem to care. We thought he was being manipulated because something bad was going on. We were right. That terrible night, the swordsmen got together to try to kill the Mizukage, and we found the person who was controlling him. This man was unique. He beat all 7 of us like we were little kids. It was the strongest power we had ever seen, and there was nothing we could do. That night, Zabuza, Mangetsu, and I were the only ones who got away. The rest were killed. Kimimaro was shocked. They had tried to kill the Mizukage but failed. Why had one ninja beat all 7 S-ranked ninja? Could Yahiko do that? Know this, Kagaya, Kisame finally said after getting up and brushing himself off. I can't join Akatsuki if I know such a strong force is out there. We're going to do everything we can to learn more about this man. The man in the orange spiral mask with one eye hole. He said he was going to rule the world, which makes sense since he had the power to do so. Your leader can make a lot of noise, but soon there will be a real war. I've never really known what I'm here for. There are lots of lies in the world of ninjas, and I could never fit in until this man came out. He is my goal in life now. I need to find him and stop him before he brings the world down with him. Right then, Kisame vanished in a flash of mist. Kimimaro could have gone after him, but he was too tired from the fight and confused from what he had just heard. Surely there wasn't a single ninja stronger than Yahiko. That couldn't be true. Yahiko had the best yin and yang chakra. No ninja could beat him. But if what Kisame said was true, this masked ninja had to be insanely strong. Kimimaro had barely been able to beat Kisame, and even then, Kisame and Kimimaro were able to get away. If Mangetsu or Zabuza had been fighting with him, Kimimaro would have been defeated for sure. But to be able to beat all 7 swordsmen at once? He heard a strange noise behind him and turned to see what it was. A little to his surprise, Zetsu came out of the ground wearing his own Akatsuki robe. Zetsu-san. Did you see me kick that guy in the behind? Kimimaro yelled, his smile coming back. Did you record it? I want to see it. Thought Zetsu to himself. All I saw was you letting Zabuza get away, he said in a low, rough voice. But yes, I recorded it. Some 3 swordsmen are on the run, which won't make Yahiko very happy. But at least we know what happened to them. You're from Kiri, Kimimaro. Do you know who Kisame was talking about when he said, this masked guy? He shook his head, hoping Zetsu might know. Nope, but I do know that the swordsmen were famous for how strong they were, Zetsu said. This needs to be told to Yahiko right away. Konoha. After several weeks, if Naruto had any hopes for his time as a ninja, they weren't these things. No ninja was needed to do yard work. He was sharp and trained to kill. This made no sense. Why could an old man hire his team to rake his lawn? Naruto lazily held up a one-handed seal for what seemed like the millionth time and made about 20 shadow copies of himself. These copies then picked up random things and turned them into rakes. He turned to look at how many huge piles of leaves he had to rake and shook his head in surprise. This man had a lot of leaves, so maybe a ninja had to step in. After 30 minutes, Naruto stepped back because he was tired and watched as Hinata and Sasuke left with his rake of 50 shadow clones. Shisui was sitting next to a tree and reading a book. The weather was nice for the time of year, and it was almost fall. However, not all the leaves had changed colors yet. It would take the man an hour to walk from his house to the village, which was surrounded by trees. Thick beams of light broke through the trees and filled the clearing where the houses were with a warm glow. Naruto thought about living here, away from the village, for a moment. Hinata seemed to love it, but he and Sasuke couldn't imagine living somewhere other than the village. He loved how busy everything was and how many people were in Konoha. Because Naruto had clones, what would have taken them hours and hours only took 30 minutes more. By evening, they were done raking all of the man's leaves. They quickly went back to Konoha to the Hokage's tower to let him know that the job was done after Sasuke carefully burned them all up when they were piled up. He couldn't help but think that the last few weeks had passed him by in a blur as they walked. Because he and his friends were so upset about how easy the missions were, they decided to make up for it by finishing 3 to 5 in a day, while other teams might only finish 2. A lot of this happened because of Naruto's clones. Even though Shisui knew they were all ready to take on higher level missions, he thought the Hokage wouldn't let them until they had earned at least a few D-level missions. In the end, this process left them with almost no free time every day. Naruto still hadn't gone back to the Yondaim's house, and when he did, he and Sasuke hadn't spent much time with Hinata outside of meals. Naruto didn't think this would happen. He wanted to become a ninja, not a gardener or someone who brought cats to ladies. In general, Naruto was mad about how bad things had turned out by the time they were standing in front of the Hokage. "Nice that another mission is over," the Hokage said through his pipe as he looked down at his papers. "Let's see here, it's hard to find D missions nowadays with these new genin teams, let's see, and the fact that your team in particular completes so many, Here we go, it appears that Daimyo's wife has lost her cat again, this morning in fact. According to this, she was walking it out too. No sir." Even though Shisui and the Hokage looked at him with some interest, Sasuke and Hinata looked at him in shock. It was like they both knew this was going to happen. "We've done enough of these little missions, and it's not like they have a dire need to be done. Have some other genin team to them, we've proved ourselves by now. We're ready for something bigger, and you know it, and Shisui knows it, and we know it." At that moment, the Hokage's face turned grave, and Naruto wondered for a moment if he should have kept his mouth shut. Shisui was about to apologize on Naruto's behalf, but the Hokage put up a hand and looked at the 3 genin with a sad face. "Are you sure you're all ready? Are you ready to go out into the ninja world, where death and treachery awaits? Are you ready to see your comrades fall beside you, see innocent people die, and be faced with impossible situations? Most C-ranked missions are saved for Chunin who have proven that they are ready by going through the Chunin exams. In normal situations, where war isn't a factor, most genin will complete D-ranked missions until they can become Chunin. More importantly, if you are given C-ranked missions, you would be expected to have other people's lives placed in your hands. Innocent people will ask you to protect them. Are you ready to put your life on the line for them? Should they be ready to hand their lives over to mere 12-year-olds? Naruto didn't need to think about this or ask his friends for reassurance. He was sure, "I knew what it meant to be a ninja the day I decided to become one." Sasuke and Hinata agreed with him by nodding behind him. "Not only that, but we have Shisui with us. We're ready to face any C-rank mission you can throw at us." When Naruto finished his sentence, the Hokage looked like he had been hit in the gut. The old man smiled with a tired look on his face. His eyes went to Sasuke and Hinata. "I see. And you too, do you share Naruto's confidence?" They all smiled and said, "Hi." At the same time, they were eager to move on from D-rank missions. "And you, Shisui?" the Hokage finally asked, but it was impossible to read his face. "Do you think your team is ready for a C-rank mission?" Shisui gave a smile and a head nod. Of course they are. Naruto didn't get why the Hokage didn't want to give them a C-rank mission or why they were given that speech about death and the need to save people. He didn't know why the Hokage had to talk about such a sad subject. They weren't in the Anbu about to go on a murder mission, and Shisui was one of the strongest jonin in the village. Even though the Hokage knew they were up to the task of any C-rank mission, he seemed ready to slow things down in any way he could. "It looks like fate can't be avoided," Sarutobi said in a scary voice. "Yes, you 3 are talented ninja, and you are bound to be given a C-rank mission. I will think of what mission to give to your team, Shisui. Come to me again in the morning, you are dismissed. Naruto's house in the afternoon to come." He let out a sigh as he put the last thing on his list in his storage scroll and threw it in his backpack. He was almost done getting ready for his first mission with a grade of C. In fact, the Hokage agreed with him, and when he and his team went in that morning, they were given a real C-level mission and the rest of the morning to pack their things and get ready in other ways. The mission looked like a pretty standard one. They were told to go northeast to Shimogakure, which is in the middle ground between the big villages of Kumo and Konoha, and stop a bandit population that seemed to be growing there. In that area of land, there were two groups: the land of hot water, which did not have a military, and the land of frost, which held Shimogakure, the village that paid Konoha for the mission. It was really that easy, and Naruto loved it. He would be doing something good for Konoha, and he would have a lot of time to train with Shisui and his team. Until now, he had never been very far from the village. He was excited to see the forests and lands beyond. It was clear that bandits were not ninja, so even if they were older than Naruto, it shouldn't be hard for him to take care of them, especially Shisui. In any case, this mission was likely to end in death. On his mission, he would have to kill other people sometimes, which he had never done before. Being able to kill someone was going to be very important for Naruto on this mission. There's something not right. He stopped when he heard the voice in his head. It had been so long since he heard it that he thought it was gone for good. What makes the areas in the middle ground between Kumo and Konoha a good place for thieves to hide? There isn't a trade route between us, so thieves couldn't get into any of the big carts that are going that way. Yukagakure doesn't have a ninja force anymore, but the village isn't very wealthy either, and they've never had a problem with bandits. Not to mention the trouble between Kumo and Konoha. A thief might as well camp out near aim. What the voice in Naruto's head had been saying wasn't as important to him as the voice itself. He thought out loud in his head, "Why do I have a voice in my head? What are you? My other self? Yet another persona?" The voice laughed. He could hear. "Not at all, child. I have nothing to do with you. You'll soon find out, though. I believe I now know what's going on." Naruto didn't like that the answer was so vague. Who was that voice? For now, that doesn't matter. But I do have some advice for you until we talk again. Watch out for the leader of Akatsuki. Watch out for Itachi. Watch out for Neji. Watch out for Konoha. Be very careful of any ninja outside of Konoha who has a Sharingan, though. What? Itachi? Why should he be careful around Itachi? Naruto sighed in irritation when the voice didn't answer after more than a minute. He then put on his backpack and was almost ready to leave the room. It was awful for him to not understand what was going on and to hear that voice. He told Shisui about it, but both he and Itachi said that there was nothing strange about him. It was also true that he should be wary of Itachi. Not at all. That was new to him. The voice told him that, but he didn't believe it. But he had to get ready for a mission first. If he heard it again, he would talk to Shisui about it. Konoha. When I looked back at Konoha from the village gates, it seemed very big. Naruto couldn't help but be amazed. He had never seen the village from the front before, and the huge gates and slightly blurred image of the Hokage monument made the village look even bigger. He felt proud for the first time in a long time. His father, the Yondaime Hokage, killed the evil Kyuubi to save the village and died. He also felt very angry at the Biju because they had messed up his childhood, which wasn't the first time. He should have been raised as the son of a Hokage, which was his birthright, but for the Kyuubi. He was young, but the village would have loved him, and he would have been a Chunin by now. His dad was one of the most powerful ninjas in history, so he would have taught him how to be strong like him. But those were just wishful thoughts. He made a face when he saw his best friend Hinata. By some strange turn of events, she too had to grow up in a bad place, even though she could have grown up like a princess. She would have been raised much better if she had been adopted by a different clan or even if the Senju were still alive. But would they get along? They were together because of bad luck after all. For some reason, they became friends at the orphanage after both of their parents died. When Hinata saw that he was looking at her, she flushed and nervously turned away, which made him smile. She was really one of a kind. Such a strong personality that was weakened by being stifled. In a way, he couldn't wait for her to come out of her shell. To be able to laugh together again like they used to. But that would happen after some time spent together, like when they were on this mission. He also looked at Shisui, Sasuke's brother. Each one of them became more and more like a family member over time. In the years to come, stories would spread about how great they were. If Konoha thought the Sannin were great, wait until they got stronger. When enemy villages heard their names, they would shut down in fear. There would be flee on-site orders everywhere with their pictures on them. A lot of fangirls would follow him to the store every time he went there. "Let's go, Naruto." That's when Shisui's voice woke Naruto up from his pleasant thoughts. He saw that his team had already started to walk away down the path that led out of Konoha and into the forest beyond. He put his backpack back in place and ran after them to catch up. That was it, the real beginning of his story. Later that day, in the evening, Shisui suggested that they spend the night in the open air instead of going out of their way to find a nearby village with a hotel. This way, they could get used to the idea. Back when they were walking together, Shisui told them, most missions will require that you camp outside. And I'll be damned if you can find an inn anywhere near a battlefield. Shisui then gave each of them a task to complete. Naruto was to go get wood for the fire, while Shisui set up camp and Hinata and Sasuke went to get food. They had all brought their own food, but again, they wouldn't always have it with them, so it was important for them to know how to cook it. Naruto thought this was a good chance to work on his ninjutsu. He had to make them himself because there weren't any perfect logs of wood lying around in the forest. He walked up to a tree, leaned back, and looked up at all the long branches. He took a strong breath and clapped his hands together, making the wind seal, which is an open palm seal. His chakra was made of wind, which is the sharpest element. The Uchiha was good at fire jutsu, so he hadn't spent much time learning wind jutsu. But that didn't mean he didn't know any. Shisui made him learn some wind techniques because, since wind was in his nature, they would be the most powerful for him. He learned a lot about chakra from Shisui. There was no need for hand seals, but Naruto wasn't even close to being good enough at nature transformation that he could turn his chakra into wind without a seal to guide it. He could feel his chakra flowing through his hands and body again when he made the palm seal or the wind seal. He could also feel the change happening inside him. He smiled at the powerful feeling that came back to him. In that way, Shisui was right. Wind chakra was much easier for him to use than fire chakra. Like the wind in the air around him, he could feel it inside himself. By letting go of his chakra, he felt like he could blow a strong gust of air out of his mouth or hands. If he used the right seals, he could also control the air around him. He tried to picture his chakra getting thinner and turning into sharp blades. Slowly, he built up the chakra inside him through quiet meditation. His hands were still sealed together in the wind seal. For the jutsu he was thinking about, there was a certain way to seal his hands, but he wanted to see if he could do it with just one seal. He let out his chakra through his palms as he took a deep breath and threw them up toward the tree when he felt ready. His surprise was palpable when a light blue gust of wind rushed forward from his hand and hit the tree hard. As the wind went through, the tree's branches moved back and forth, making the tree bend and grumble. Naruto stopped the flow of his chakra after about 10 seconds. He looked up with disappointment as the tree continued to sway, but its branches were still fine. While the Senju were known for being able to control a certain nature jutsu with just one hand seal, he wasn't quite there yet. Even though he shouldn't have been surprised because not many people could do it, he was still mad that he couldn't. Since he had trained with the Kage Bunshin for so long, he was able to use it with just one hand seal, which wasn't nature transformation. He let out a sigh and flew through a few proper hand seals before landing on the wind seal again. Naruto could feel the jutsu form perfectly inside him now that his chakra was being guided through the seals. Without a doubt, he got on his knees and threw his hands up again, this time letting go of the jutsu by sending a blast of chakra through his palms. This time, his hands let out a similar gust of wind, but this one seemed sharp and clear, as the jutsu was meant to do. It didn't bend the tree back when it hit the branches. Instead, it cut through most of the branches more than once, sending pieces of wood flying. As the technique came to an end, Naruto smiled as a shower of wood fell around him, making loud clunks in the ground. He used the seal in his right hand to call out a group of clones to go get what they could. Then, he started to walk back to the camp, his stomach grumbling. Later, in the late evening, the 4 people in the group sat quietly around the fire and ate the meat that Sasuke and Hinata had caught earlier. It was a warm evening, and the sun was just starting to go down behind the horizon. Its rays were barely breaking through the thick forest, making the air dark with orange bursts here and there. There was a sense of wildlife in the air around them, and birds kept making noise in the trees above. It looked like Naruto was very happy. He knew that he was meant to be here that moment. He was on a mission outside of Konoha with his 2 best friends and their Jonin sensei, his older brother Shisui. Missions are often difficult and strenuous, Shisui would say, but they can create the strongest bonds. I hated Itachi for the longest time, because he was my equal and my rival, but after we were put on an Anbu mission together, everything changed. True friendship is discovered in battle, or in tough situations. Naruto was getting a sense of what that meant. They weren't really on a dangerous mission, and they were just sitting there together, but he could feel that the bond between them was getting stronger, especially between him, Sasuke, and Hinata. Besides the mission at hand, nothing else was important at this time. He didn't care about his room at home, the schoolwork he had to do, or the festivals that might be going on back in the village. It was a truly amazing experience. He knew it was a bad idea, but he couldn't wait until he went on really dangerous missions with her so that their friendship would grow even more. He took another bite and then turned to look at his 2 friends across the fire. While Sasuke and Shisui were arguing over small things, Hinata was smiling along with them. It looked like they were all so happy and carefree. After a few seconds, Hinata looked at him and saw that he was staring. This made her face heat up and her eyes nervously dart to other things. The Naruto smiled. He didn't think much about it, but he did think she was pretty cute. Yes, she was pretty, and she also has a great laugh. She's also very smart. For people his age, having crushes on other people wasn't unusual. Naruto knew this because girls would tell Sasuke about their secrets about 3 times a day because they were friends with him. It was annoying, but it was how things were. Naruto knew that he would get a girlfriend and maybe even get married one day. He thought about whether there was a chance that if he and Hinata got closer over the next few years. He turned his head away. He wasn't thinking straight. They couldn't just like each other. Hinata had to like him first for anything to happen. He didn't know who Hinata liked either. She didn't fawn over Sasuke like all the other girls did, which was good, but she also didn't fawn over anyone. Ninjas shouldn't have been interested in love in the first place, no matter what. There was a reason why you don't see many old ninjas. They were about to die, and for ninjas, death often comes quickly. Even more so if he gets stronger and starts going on missions that are more dangerous. Without a doubt, training came first. As the evening turned into night, and the sky was clear, they all took their sleeping mats out of their containment scrolls and went to sleep. It was a quiet night. Tomorrow, Kiri, a man wearing an orange spiral mask with a single eye hole, are you sure? Kimimaro gave a nod. In his Akatsuki robe, he was sitting on a tree stump at the moment. He saw an astral projection of Yahiko in front of him. It was colored like an electric rainbow. His voice made it sound like they were talking on the radio. It had been days since he had looked all over Kiri for Zabuza, Kisame, or Mangetsu, but he couldn't find them. Zetsu had already gone back to tell Yahiko what they had found, but when he gave up looking, Kimimaro used the special ring that each captain was given to get in touch with Yahiko himself. When he used a certain jutsu, Yahiko's image showed up in front of him. Yahiko looked off in a different direction and said, I'm afraid this news is even worse than the news that Zabuza and the other 2 swordsmen are still on the loose. Yahiko wasn't mad at Kimimaro for a moment, which made him happy for a moment but also interested. Why, he said, do you know who this masked guy is? Have you met him before? Yahiko gave a serious nod. Yes, and recently too. Ever since I discovered that the Rinnegan can be used to connect myself to multiple clones, I've been seeking out special abilities to give to certain shadow clones of mine. Summoning jutsu happens to be one of them, so I've sent some of my clones to go out in search for the most powerful summons there are. One of them met a man who fits this description. Kimimaro was shocked. He remembered Kisame saying that the man in the mask was stronger than Yahiko. That was obviously not true, but he still wanted to ask Yahiko if they had fought. If this man was controlling the Mizukage for a certain amount of time, and if Kisame claimed that he was seeking to rule the world. Yahiko seemed to be upset. He hadn't given this man in a mask much thought until that moment. Yes, it was clear that the man in the mask was strong if he could beat the swordsman, but Yahiko was also strong. No matter how many times he planned to save the world of ninjas, Yahiko never gave up or showed doubt. That made Kimimaro feel unbeatable just for being on the same side as Yahiko. But for Yahiko to care this much about a single man. Yahiko finally said, "Things are going to change. We're going to have to start advancing Akatsuki's grand plan a lot sooner than we had expected." Kimimaro was shocked. He got off the tree stump and asked, How quickly?" Before the end of the year, Yahiko said, "Akatsuki will begin to start the next great ninja war. Either that, or I will have to seek this man out and kill him." On the way to Kumo, Naruto dodged and turned to try to stay away from the deadly hand that went over him. One of his favorite things to do was sparring. It made him stronger and gave him a chance to hang out with his friends. He knew that one wrong move could hurt him all day, though. Some people thought Hinata was very fragile and weak, but she wasn't at all. Naruto knew that he would probably lose a fight with her that only used taijutsu. They taught her how to fight with their bare hands, that's all. The name was Juken. It kind of made Naruto smile. The Uchiha had the best genjutsu, the Senju had the best ninjutsu, but the Hyuga had the best taijutsu by far. Hinata could close off one of his main chakra gates and make him lose feeling in his hand by just blocking one of his attacks. Neji was so good at this technique that he could knock you out in seconds, but she wasn't as accurate as he was. However, she knew where all the major nerves were, which made her an unpleasant opponent. Naruto made a kawarimi with a falling leaf behind him when he had a second to spare. In the end, the substitution was his best jutsu, even better than his Kage Bunshin. He had reached a level where he could focus his chakra perfectly and do the jutsu without even having to seal his hands. This made it very useful. People with very sharp eyes would be the only ones to notice when he used the jutsu. Even if Hinata hadn't seen, she still managed to land a jab with her knuckles into his side just as he finished. If she hadn't, it would have done a lot of damage. Naruto instead blew up into a cloud of smoke, which showed the real one far behind it. He didn't wait around. He wasn't very good at hand seals, but he was able to fly through three quickly enough to land on the palm seal before Hinata could get close enough to touch him. He smiled as a familiar feeling of power swept through him. This feeling let him connect with the air and wind around him. He had learned from Shisui that wind moved in circles. Fire was more rough and jagged, while water was more smooth and fluid. Wind, on the other hand, seemed to flow in circles. Before Hinata could get to him, Naruto turned around and walked straight toward her, pushing the air around him with his palms. He let out a huge burst of wind that hit Hinata and threw her rolling across the forest floor. Even before he could start his next move, Shisui stepped in and stopped the fight. "Well done, you two," he said as Hinata got up and walked over to them, even though she was a little scared. "Hinata, your taijutsu is still really improving, and Naruto, your usage of wind techniques is improving as well. I told you actual jutsu was a lot more fun than just having your shadow clones running around and punching people." Naruto let out a small blush of shame. Shisui had told him before that he used the Kage Bunshin, one of his favorite moves, too often in battle. Even though he was very good at it, Shisui told him that he would eventually face opponents who could easily kill the clones, and that he would need a wider range of jutsu. At this point, Sasuke could also use advanced fire jutsu pretty easily. Since wind and fire go well together, it would help them in battle if they could use both of them separately. Sasuke, who had been standing nearby and watching, joined the three of them in their conversation. After taking a break from his own fight, he said, "Let's go. I'm kind of hungry, and I want to reach Yukagakure before sundown so we can actually have a place to sleep." Yukagakure, also known as the village hidden in hot water, was now more of a theme park than a village. It used to be that they had their own ninja force, but at some point, they changed things up. It was now known that the village had some of the world's most luxurious shower rooms. After, they would go to the land of Frost and Shimogakure, also known as the village hidden in Frost, which was a ninja village that was having trouble with bandits. Naruto heard the Hokage tell Shisui, maybe they could handle their own issues if all of their ninja hadn't gone to Ames Akatsuki. Either way, at least we get the extra money. Naruto was interested in whether Shimogakure would be like Yukagakure. They might not last long as a hidden village if they didn't have enough ninja to go on a mission against thieves. That made him think about whether it was good or bad. There was never a time when Shimogakure was big and strong, and the land between Kumo and Konoha was dangerous. Shisui agreed and went to get his pack. "Let's get going," he said. Everyone did the same thing and got their things together, getting ready to move again. After hours, they didn't make it to Yukagakure before it got dark. Because they had a few days to get to Shimogakure, they were moving pretty slowly. Because of this, they probably wouldn't get to Yukagakure for another half hour. Naruto hardly had time to wait. Naruto was tired from traveling slowly for 2 days and stopping to eat and train. He wanted to lounge in a hot tub and eat something hot, preferably ramen. Yukagakure's main source of income came from tourists, so they had to have a great ramen stand or restaurant. He knew it wouldn't be as good as Ichiraku's, but he could already taste the ramen. The group had gone off the path and into the trees, which is a faster way for ninjas to get around. Because chakra made their legs stronger, they could jump and bound off of branches with more grace and speed than humans. Since everyone was tired and hungry, they agreed to speed up. Shisui, Hinata, and Sasuke were all focused on jumping from branch to branch in front of Naruto. He stared at them. As the wind blew through his hair, the quiet night background noise became less clear. It was a very quiet night. He could almost hear the busy sounds of the nearby village if he closed his eyes and let his mind wander. He could hear people talking loudly in restaurants and kids running to different stands while trying to persuade their parents to. Careful, it took a split second. In his mind, Naruto heard a shout that made him open his eyes and look ahead. They could see tiny sparks of light dancing up in the trees in the forest around them. People outside of Naruto knew it meant one thing, even though it might have looked peaceful or pretty to them. Tags that explode. Boom. While his world was on fire, he poured chakra into his hands and arms and threw them in front of his face. He thought a train had hit him. In a split second, he was thrown down with such incredible force that the world went black around him as he hit the ground with a thud. "Stand up. Get up. I have to see this." It hurt his head. To be more specific, it hurt a lot. With every beat of his heart, he could feel pain all over his body, but mostly in his head. His head slowly rose off the ground as he tried to remember what had happened. There was an explosion. There was an explosive tag on the trees, and they were blown away. Shisui, Hinata, and Sasuke. He tried hard to open his eyes and look around. Hinata was lying on the ground to his left. She was still asleep but breathing. On his right was Sasuke, who was also hurt. It made Naruto feel better to know that his friends were still alive. All of a sudden, the world seemed to be spinning, and he could feel himself about to fall asleep again. He forced himself to stay awake, though, because he wanted to check on Shisui and make sure he was okay. He almost passed out from what he saw. Itachi was tall and stood a few yards in front of the group. The red in his eyes looked scary. Because of the pattern, Naruto thought at first that it was a Sharingan. But Itachi's eyes looked different from anything else he had seen. He had a bloody kunai in his hand, and blood was running down to a body at his feet. "No, don't be like that." Naruto could see Shisui's body as the dead body after his eyes got used to it. He was trying to scream, but as he did, his head fell back and he felt pain all over his body. He almost passed out. When he finally got the strength to look up, he saw Itachi knelt down in front of him on the ground, staring into Naruto's soul with his murderous eyes. He still had the bloody kunai in his hand. Naruto was sure he knew what had happened now. Itachi had caught them off guard and killed Shisui. It was clear from the look in Itachi's eyes. He choked out, "Why?" and looked up at Itachi. Itachi looked like it was empty. His voice was steady and even. He said, Shisui was a test of my strength. He had to die. Naruto felt fear course through his body for the first time. Shisui was killed by Itachi. He was also going to be killed by Itachi. His friends and he were going to die. Naruto tried to get up and run away in a last-ditch effort to get away, but his body wouldn't let him. As tears came out of his eyes, fear, sadness, and anger ran through his body. He was going to die. There was something eerie about Itachi's voice as he spoke. He said, "Don't worry about yourself for now, Naruto. You won't die tonight. You have an important role that you have to play out. But first, I must reveal something to you that has been kept secret for your entire life. It's related to your heritage." It was hard for Naruto to think. What did Itachi mean? He already knew that the fourth Hokage was his dad. Yes, Naruto, the fourth Hokage was your father, but the most important details are still hidden from you. As you know, your father died saving the village on the fateful night the Kyuubi attacked. I know, Naruto finally forced out. He killed the Kyuubi. Itachi laughed and shook his head while looking at Naruto from a low position. No, he died saving the village, but he did not die killing the Kyuubi. Not even your father could manage to kill the beast. There's a long story that has been kept secret from you, Naruto, but I will reveal it to you in short right now. Perhaps, if we live through the night, you can inquire the Hokage about it later. Do you know of Madara Uchiha? Naruto gave a head nod. The Uchiha clan didn't like Madara. At one point, he was both one of the world's strongest and worst ninjas. His rivalry with the first Hokage was very strong, and the Hokage killed him in battle. No, Madara wasn't killed. He managed to live, and when he grew strong enough he attacked Konoha again with the Kyuubi under his control. That fateful night, Naruto, your father didn't manage to kill both Madara and the Kyuubi. No, instead he managed to seal them away into a newborn baby, with the hopes of that baby being able to withhold all of their power. When Naruto suddenly put two and two together, his eyes got really big. Newborn child. His birthday was the day the Kyuubi broke into the village. The fourth Hokage sealed the Kyuubi, and Madara Uchiha, into you. You house two of the most powerful beings inside of you right now, Naruto, two of the most evil. And tonight, I ask that you let me borrow their power. All of a sudden, darkness surrounded him. Late at night near Yukagakure. About 30 seconds after the explosion, Itachi landed in the open area. Naruto, Hinata, and his brother were found unconscious on the forest floor with Shisui knelt in front of them. The night wind slowly blew away all the smoke. He wasn't shocked. The blast wasn't meant to kill everyone, just knock out the three genin. He knew Shisui wouldn't be surprised by the tags because he himself wouldn't have been, and Shisui was about as strong as him. His heart rate started to rise very quickly. He done it for real. He was going to kill Shisui in a fight. He was standing in the forest in a very different way than when he told the Hokage about his plan weeks before. He needed to calm down by taking a deep breath. He had to pay full attention if he was going to fight his best friend Shisui, or else he would die and Konoha would lose. Before he spoke, Shisui stood up and asked Itachi, "What does this mean?" He had just made sure that his genin were still alive. "Explain yourself." This is how Itachi looked as he thought about his answer. Glum. "I've come here to kill you, Shisui, and obtain the Mangekyo Sharingan." Shisui was shocked. He knew what Mangekyo Sharingan was but not much else. Itachi didn't know much about the Mangekyo until Madara told him that killing Shisui would open it. The Uchiha elders kept the Mangekyo a secret. And once I obtain the Mangekyo Sharingan, I'm going to use it to kill the Uchiha. Even if Shisui had been shocked before, this made him feel even more shocked. He had nothing to say. Why would Itachi want to kill the Uchiha? His own clan. Their own clan. The clan they were raised in, fought for, and would give their lives for. Their family. Itachi knew he had to give more information. "Shisui, you should know that if the Uchiha go through with their coup d'etat, Konoha will fall. If we strike at the council and attempt to overthrow Konoha's military, we'll either die in the process, or leave Konoha in such a weakened state that Kumo or Iwa would be foolish not to destroy us. And we Uchiha are too proud to simply accept the fact that the council is trying to push us away." Shisui yelled at him, You fool. And Itachi jumped back. The council isn't just trying to push us away, they're going to try and kill us. Just like they did with the Senju. That's why we have to fight back and rebel. Maybe the other clans don't believe us, but we know the evil of our own village. We have to stop it, otherwise who's to stop the council from killing off every other clan as well? But to think that you would be the tool they used to kill us. Itachi clenched his teeth in rage. You're the fool, Shisui. The council may be corrupt and evil, but if we were to kill off the council, we would have to kill everyone in it. The clans would despise us and never trust the Uchiha again, and we'd be exiled from Konoha if not exterminated. Shisui replied, then that's a risk we have to take. At least then we would know that Konoha could finally be rid of its corruption. Itachi fought back angrily, throwing his arms to the side. There'd be no Konoha left. War would break out. We'd single-handedly start the next great shinobi war. Do you want to see another war? Don't you remember what the last one felt like? To see so much death. At least if I kill the Uchiha, we can prolong such a war. We can prolong such useless death. Shisui was shocked. And what of the next clan? How many clans will you annihilate at the council's bidding in order to prevent a war? Don't you see that you're not solving anything, you're only delaying the inevitable? I'm going to join Akatsuki, Itachi said with determination. There is a solution to our problem, Shisui. There will always be corruption in every village. Konoha isn't the only one with a council that is trying to eradicate bloodlines. But the Amekage, the leader of Akatsuki, he knows the solution. He has a plan that will change the world. With him, I think there's a chance that we can finally know peace. He touched my mind and showed me a world that he envisions. I think he has the strength to do it, Shisui. If we can prevent war just long enough for him, I know that he'll be able to bring us peace. But there's no way our clan would ever believe that. Shisui didn't say anything for a while. A cool breeze from the night came in between them and made the leaves on the tall trees above them snap. In a last-ditch effort, Shisui asked, is there nothing I can say to convince you? He shook his head. What I'm doing may not be right, but it will give us peace in the long run, I'm sure of it. We could avoid a war altogether. Shisui said, yes, I see. Then you and I, Itachi, will have to fight to the death. I will defend my clan, the Uchiha, until I die. Itachi replied, and I will protect Konoha, my village, until the day I die. They both nodded, letting each other know what was going to happen. Before the night was over, one of them would die, and that death would change the whole course of events in Konoha. But neither of them was thinking about that. When they looked at each other, they didn't see hate, they saw sadness. It was almost like they could read each other's minds when both of their Sharingans were turned on. As time went on, memories came and went. The person in front of Itachi wasn't his enemy, but his best friend. He could remember the first time they met. Itachi's parents had been having a nice dinner with Shisui's parents because Fugaku was the clan head. Since Shisui and Itachi were both good, they decided to train together. Instead of becoming friends, they became fierce rivals. Even though there were two of them, they were always equal. They were both geniuses in a clan of geniuses. There would never be a winner, no matter how many times they sparred. Itachi started to improve his ninjutsu skills quickly, while Shisui's speed started to get faster. It wasn't long before Shisui's taijutsu and Itachi's ninjutsu were the best in the clan. Together, they did very well in school and graduated when they were 7 years old. They chose to take the Chunin exams 3 years later, when they were 10 years old. They both made it to the finals. In front of thousands of villagers and several different kage, they fought to a tie and both passed out from exhaustion at the same time. They both turned into Chunin, then Jonin, and finally Anbu. It wasn't until they were given the same Anbu mission that they started to get along. Itachi was full of himself. He believed he could easily complete the Anbu missions by himself, just like he had done everything else in his life. Shisui saved his life when he was clearly going to die and was outnumbered and outmatched. This was the start of their friendship. They couldn't be separated. They no longer saw each other as rival prodigies, but as prodigy friends, both of whom brought great honor to the Uchiha. They thought of each other as equals and were both ready to die for the other in battle. They also always knew what the other was thinking. They would work out together, eat together, cry and laugh together. They would fight together one last time. No, the person in front of Itachi wasn't his enemy, it was his friend. This was something he had never done before. To save his village, he had to kill his best friend. It had to be done. Right away, the battle started. To catch Shisui off guard, Itachi threw a kunai straight at him in a blur of motion. The kunai was moving so fast that any normal ninja would have died right then and there. But Shisui wasn't a normal ninja. Konoha's fastest ninja was him. Itachi's eyes got really big when Shisui vanished before the kunai got to him and then reappeared next to him. Even with Itachi's Sharingan, Shisui's Shunshin seemed like it could take him anywhere. Even so, Itachi was quick, too. He blocked Shisui's kick with his arms just in time, sending Shisui flying to the side. When he landed, he burst into crows, which made Shisui's eyes go big. The taijutsu of Shisui was too fast for Itachi to keep up. Itachi's genjutsu and ninjutsu were also too fast for Shisui. The black crows flew at Shisui and then turned into fired-up kunai, making him jump into the air to avoid them. Itachi showed up in front of Shisui in the air. Sharingan on Shisui could tell in a split second that it was a shadow clone, but that didn't make it any less dangerous. At the very last second, the clone thrust a kunai into Shisui's chest, but Shisui vanished and reappeared behind the clone in the air, stabbing it in the back with his own kunai. Boom! From the ground, Itachi saw his shadow clone blow up. When he was younger, he dreamed of the big fights he would fight as an adult. His mind was filled with amazing battles, like the one between Madara and the Shodaime. He thought about how amazing it would be and how long it would last. But this wasn't like that. That wasn't his goal, to show off all of his cool moves. He just wanted to kill. As he got stronger, he thought that the battle would last longer and be more intense. But he soon learned that in a battle between two masters, one mistake, or a millisecond, could end the match. That's what he hoped would happen tonight. When he saw Shisui fall to the ground in front of him, he cursed. Shisui's right arm was burned, but he was otherwise fine. He was really good at his job if he could avoid an explosion that was right in front of him. He didn't want this fight to last too long. He had to kill Shisui right away, before he died himself by making a mistake. With a wave of his arm, a shadow clone appeared out of nowhere and used a Shunshin to charge at Shisui. To avoid making the same mistake twice, Shisui avoided the clone completely. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Itachi and stabbed him in the chest. Boom! Shisui cursed just seconds before the clone blew up. Itachi had used a kawarimi on the clone, and Shisui was happy to set off another clone bomb since there was no cloud of smoke. He would smile in a sad way if he had time. This person has something Naruto could use. Once more, Shisui dodged the explosion with a lightning-fast Shunshin that threw him to the side. Before he could turn around to face Itachi, a big fireball had already hit him. He cursed again, saying that if he kept using Shunshin, he would get tired or, even worse, Itachi would be able to figure out what he was going to do and kill him. He had to look out for his clan. He was too strong to die. He quickly thought of something and threw a kawarimi straight through the fireball. Itachi had to be standing somewhere in that direction. Quickly, before the fireball hit him, he did his own kawarimi with the kunai, which put him on the safe side of it while it went off behind him without hurting him. He charged at Itachi, who wasn't ready for it. He pulled out another kunai and fought Itachi close up. In this case, Shisui was better at close combat. Shisui felt better than Itachi when Itachi pulled out his own short katana to fight him. Itachi's eyes may have been able to keep up with him. There were only a few seconds between blows, but it felt like hundreds of them. With each blow, Shisui could feel Itachi slowing down. He could end the battle for good if he kept doing this and didn't let Itachi kawarimi. In an instant, it took place. The speed was too fast for Itachi to keep up, and one of his blocks was too weak, so he was pushed back. This gave Shisui a chance that he couldn't miss. While Itachi was off balance, Shisui rushed forward and pushed the kunai right into Itachi's opening. The sword cut through Itachi's stomach. Shisui knew that he had done it. He was able to beat Itachi. When the two best friends looked at each other, time seemed to slow down. They were flying through the air because of the speed, and Shisui's kunai went straight through Itachi's gut. Shisui could tell that they were both shocked. This was the end, right? Their friendship coming to an end. What happened at the end of Itachi's life? In this very moment in the air, Shisui felt a sudden fear build up inside him. Why was he killing his best friend? He had a reason. It was important to fight this battle. That's when he remembered that Itachi seemed to have had the same thought. Itachi's eyes went from shock and fear to deadly determination all of a sudden. He also had a reason. Shisui tried to pull Itachi's arm away, but Itachi grabbed it first. He could not lose this battle. It wasn't possible for him to lose this battle. He had to win. He didn't feel this pain at all. Through his Sharingan, Shisui saw what came next. In this very moment in the air, a Kawarimi was made and put to death. The chakra change made Shisui aware that the Itachi he was stabbing had just changed into a shadow clone. The real Itachi's chakra presence showed up off to the side. His chakra flashed, and he did a familiar jutsu. He was afraid as he looked into the clone's eyes because he knew what was going to happen next. The clone still had a firm hold on his arm when he tried to shunshin. Boom! As Itachi watched the explosion, his Sharingan got stronger. As a result of having to do the jutsu quickly and not being able to focus on it enough, the blast wasn't nearly as big as his last two. He could see Shisui's body and chakra fly off to the side and hit a tree with a loud crash through the flames. He had done it. The battle's tides changed in an instant. Now all he had to do was kill Shisui. As soon as he thought that, he hit his knee and felt pain all over his body. As soon as he put his hands on his stomach, blood started to leak out. It hurt even more when he coughed up blood because it made his body move. He quickly thought that he might have been killed. He would know if he looked at the wound and thought about it, but he didn't have time and the pain was too great for him to concentrate. He got back up, and his eyes were fixed on Shisui's body that was still lying on the ground. He was determined more than anything else. He was still alive after the blast because he could see the chakra moving through Shisui's body. He got closer to Shisui little by little. He took a kunai out of his free hand while keeping the other one tight around his stomach. That was it. The battle had to end. Shisui turned over quickly and looked at Itachi with eyes filled with fear and pain. He seemed to know that Itachi was nearby. Shisui was out of options. The force of the blast would have probably broken many bones in his body, even if he had been able to cover himself in chakra to protect himself from the burns. Shisui tried to get up and run, but it didn't work. He kept falling to the ground and screaming in pain every time they tried. Itachi cried out in pain, "It's over, Shisui." When the last thought came to his mind, he almost laughed. They both had a lot of A-rank jutsu that they didn't use in the battle. It was the same kunai that almost killed Itachi and would kill Shisui. They spent days and hours learning and mastering new jutsu, but only one kunai would decide the winner of the battle. Shisui was on his knees and hands shaking by the time he stood in front of him. Itachi could see fresh and smeared blood all over him, and the fact that he was having trouble standing meant that his arms and legs were probably broken. Shisui said, "I," in a low voice that Itachi could hear. He coughed up blood and fell to his forearms, grunting in pain. He turned his head up and strained to look Itachi in the eyes. The Sharingan he had was gone. His real eyes, which were full of fear and sadness, were instead there. He had tears running down his cheeks. "I'm scared, Itachi." Itachi had a pain in his chest that was almost as bad as the pain from being stabbed. Shisui, his friend, was hurt. Standing on the edge of death. He was the one who was going to kill him. His body begged him to jump down and help his friend now that the adrenaline was wearing off. He felt sick when he thought about killing him. Could he really do it? How? Shisui said again in a low voice. "How are you going to kill the clan? You can't possibly have the strength. What about Naruto?" Itachi's eyes got softer when he thought about it. "I'm going to awaken Madara within Naruto. He's agreed to help me, as long as in return he gets a Sharingan. I'll give Naruto my eyes, and then go with him to fight the clan. We'll kill them all." Itachi stopped to think about what he had just said. He was sick. He did this to stop the war that was going to happen because he was a pacifist. But all of a sudden, he thought of the children he had killed, the innocent lives he had taken, and his family. Could he do it? Could he really kill his friend? He had to, but when he looked deep into Shisui's eyes, he felt fear come over him. What if there was a different way? It's possible that he killed his family for no reason. What if Kumo used the chance to attack Konoha anyway? It's possible that the Amekkage lied to him and planned to destroy Konoha on his own. What if he failed to kill Shisui? He had to, though. For Sasuke's sake, for his sake. The council would kill the Uchiha if he didn't. No, Danzo would. Even though the Hokage liked to talk about peace and talks, he knew that the old man would protect Konoha if the Uchiha tried to take over. All of the people in the Uchiha would be killed, including Naruto, himself, Shisui, and Sasuke. He had the chance to save both Konoha and his brother from Danzo and the others, but he understood when he looked into his friend's eyes. He knew he was not able to do it. He wasn't a killer. He looked back and saw the eyes of all the people he had killed. His friend's eyes, who died in the last big war. The little girl with blue hair whose eyes were filled with crystals after her parents were killed. The Uchiha's eyes, which he was about to kill. He did not hold his kunai. It was impossible for him to do. Shisui muttered, "You're an idiot." He bowed his head and looked at the ground. Shisui could see Itachi's tears being wiped away on the ground. How are you going to watch over Naruto and the others in the future if you're blind? How are you going to protect Konoha if you can't see? How are you going to even survive killing our clan? You won't. He shut up, and there was silence in the night. These two people were both very unhappy and were close to death. Shisui could not be killed by Itachi. It was impossible for him to do. Even though he knew Shisui could grab the kunai and kill him before he could do anything, it didn't bother him. He might not have any more problems if he died. He would no longer have to worry about Konoha or any of these other things. You have to kill me. It was very clear in the forest and in Itachi's head. My genin, you have to protect Konoha and Naruto, Sasuke, and Hinata. There's no way you can get Fugaku to back down now. Konoha's council is bad, and Fugaku is right to want to destroy it, even if it means starting another big war. Shisui was on the ground shaking, and his eyes were close to his forearm. He started to cry, making a sad sound that Itachi would always remember. Itachi looked down at him like he had lost. I don't care at this point. So be it. Let that rest on Fugaku's head, or the council, but I can't. You have to kill me. This time, Shisui stood up and looked right into Itachi's eyes as he said it, which made Itachi gasp and widen his eyes in shock. He thought he was looking into the sad, dark eyes of his best friend, but what he saw was a deep red Sharingan. It wasn't, though. It looked like a Sharingan with 4 points moving in a saw-like circle. One of them had a trail of blood going down it. The Sharingan of the Mangekyo. Itachi was shocked. However, he quickly picked up the kunai from the ground before he could even think about how Shisui had done it. He was shocked when he saw it. His body wasn't moving on its own. It was being controlled by Shisui, and the one thought that came to him all of a sudden. I need to kill Shisui. No, he fought against it. He had the Sharingan. Shisui could never get him to do what she wanted with Genjutsu. Though he bit his lip to make blood and closed his eyes in pain, a big image of Shisui's Mangekyo was shown in the dark and controlled him. The only and terrible order was to kill him. He moved toward Shisui, but his body was shaking because he was trying to fight back. He couldn't take his eyes off of Shisui's because they were filled with fear. He tried to fight back by yelling, "Shisui, stop this. I can't. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to live in this hell." Shisui was able to smile at him with regret. "Itachi, you have to do this now. You can't give up and let Konoha burn to the ground, not even for the Uchiha clan. Not even for me, and you have to protect Naruto and your little brother. If by doing this, Danzo will spare them, then let my death spare theirs. We couldn't stop this, but maybe one day Naruto and Sasuke will." Itachi kept getting closer and closer to Shisui. How did Shisui find out that Danzo had made a deal with him? No, not me. It doesn't have to be me. He finally stood right in front of Shisui and kept looking into his eyes. Shisui had a trail of blood going down one of his eyes, but the other eye had a tear running out of it. Shisui told him in a quiet voice, "Go through with your plan. Kill me, gain the Mangekyo Sharingan, and kill the Uchiha clan. Protect Konoha. But don't give Naruto your eyes, instead, give him mine." Itachi's eyes got even bigger. "No, Shisui, don't do this. We can find another way. We can. I'll see you later, Itachi." Itachi pulled his arm back and pushed the kunai into Shisui's chest. When the kunai went through Shisui's heart, he gasped in shock. He looked at his hand and couldn't believe it was his own that was shaking. Why did this have to happen? Is it because he just changed his mind and no longer wants to kill Shisui? Shisui coughed up blood, and then his blood-red eyes turned black. The man smiled as he fell to the side off the kunai and hit the ground with a soft thud. He was so shocked that Itachi fell to his knees next to him. Shisui stopped moving and couldn't breathe. Itachi said to himself, "No," as he looked at his friend. He screamed in pain and grabbed his head as his forehead hit the ground. Why did things have to go this way? He killed his best friend. All of a sudden, he felt a terrible pain in his head that centered around his eyes. His eyes felt like they were on fire. He screamed in pure agony. The pain in his head and the burning in his eyes almost made him pass out. What was going on was this. He screamed, "Ah," and almost pulled out his own hair. As his eyes slowly opened, tears of both pain and sadness came out. His body started to shake from the pain. He finally stopped moving after at least 1 minute. When he got up and opened his eyes, the world looked different to him. He saw a world full of hate and loneliness. He saw a world where his friend wasn't there. He had done it. His best friend died because he woke up the Mangekyo Sharingan. He had. But don't give Naruto your eyes, instead, give him mine. Shisui's voice was clear in his head, even though he was dead. As he looked down at the body of his best friend, he knew that the last thing he wanted to do was make the body dirty, but he had to. He had no choice. It was a curse from Shisui that he had never seen before. Shisui could gently control someone's mind without them realizing it thanks to his normal eye technique. Itachi and most Uchiha were also able to see through this genjutsu. But this method was very different. It had to be a Mangekyo move. Itachi knew the genjutsu was on him, but he couldn't get away from it. Because it was in him, he had to follow the curse. When he heard a noise off to the side, he knew that Shisui had fallen close to where the 3 genin were lying. It seemed like fate was telling Naruto to stir and wake up. It was like he knew what was going to happen next. Naruto looked at Itachi for a moment before his face hit the ground. Itachi's heart hurt. He was now a killer. He had cut himself off from everyone and everything in his life. No matter who he met, Naruto, Sasuke, or anyone else, they would always feel bad about him. Shisui didn't want Itachi to bend down and grab his tunic. He then started to drag Shisui toward Naruto. He knew what was going to happen because he had studied the right jutsu and medical steps for transplanting a Sharingan. It was not going to look good. When he got to Naruto, he dropped Shisui's body and knelt down in front of the boy. Naruto looked up at him again and saw those nasty eyes. Naruto choked out, "Why?" and looked up at Itachi. Itachi was sad. His voice was steady and even. "Shisui was a test of my strength," he said. "I didn't have to tell Naruto the painful truth." Naruto wasn't ready to learn that the village he swore to protect was sick from the inside out. To give Naruto a real goal for the future, someone to hunt down and kill, he should make himself the enemy. He had to die. Itachi could see Naruto's pure fear running through his body. It looked like his body wouldn't let him crawl away. He was so scared that tears came out of his eyes and he gasped. Itachi was ashamed of himself. In a monotone voice, he read Naruto's mind and said, "Don't worry about yourself for now. You won't die tonight. You have an important role that you have to play out. But first, I must reveal something to you that has been kept secret for your entire life. It's related to your heritage." Naruto's mind. A look inside. As Naruto's subconscious mind moved back and forth, Madara stood in front of the huge cage holding the Kyuubi. He would sometimes snap his fingers, which would make a small black flame appear on the tip of his finger. He would quickly put it out before doing it again. "The time is almost up, Lord Kyuubi," he said out loud in his creepy, smooth voice. The great fox rested his head on his forearms while he was locked up, never paying attention to what was going on around him. "Are you healing Naruto's eyes?" It growled like a Kyuubi. "The boy draws from my reserves whether he wants to or not." Madara didn't seem sure, "So the eyes will heal then?" When the fox let out a breath, the water on the floor rushed past Madara, who then turned his head to the side. "The eyes will heal." Madara smiled with a dark grin, and his bright red eyes showed that he was really happy. He let out a happy laugh to ease his stress. Itachi did kill his friend, but instead of putting his own eyes in Naruto like the deal said he would, he put the eyes of Shisui, the friend he had just killed, in Naruto's place. It surprised Madara that Itachi could be so mean to do something like that, but he liked it anyway. Many people knew about Shisui's eyes because Madara had spent so much time inside Naruto. There was no doubt that he was very good at genjutsu. Shisui's eyes were much better than Itachi's, even though he didn't practice it much. These things worked out really well for Naruto, who now has such beautiful eyes. Not only did Naruto get strong eyes, but they also healed perfectly. Sharingan were put into bodies of people who weren't Uchiha. This wasn't a new thing. Many enemy clans and villages had done it before. But the outcome was usually terrible. For someone to be able to use the Sharingan, they had to have a very advanced form of the Yin Kekkei Genkei, or spiritual chakra. If not, the Sharingan would drain the user's chakra much faster than a normal Uchiha, which could sometimes kill them. The person using it would need to already have a lot of spiritual chakra, or else the transplant wouldn't do anything. Not only that, but the transplanted eye could never be turned off, which led to many unnecessary deaths. Naruto wasn't like that. Together, the Sharingan's amazing healing powers and the life force of the Uzumaki clan made it possible for Naruto, who had a huge amount of spiritual chakra, to become one. The fourth Hokage's seal was slowly taking in the fox's chakra, just like the Kyuubi said. It was also taking in Madara's chakra, which is why Naruto's spiritual chakra looked like that of a Uchiha. Because of this, Madara was sure that Naruto would be able to use the Sharingan whenever he wanted to. That's not why Madara liked this change, though. The reason he liked it was that Naruto wouldn't go blind when he took over his body and used his Mangekyo Sharingan. It was clear that his eyes would be hurt, but Madara wouldn't have to hold back since he could heal them and it was a Uchiha eye. "It's been 12 years, Lord Kyuubi," Madara said, facing the cage, "since I've truly been able to use these eyes of mine. And what better time to use it than to purge out the weak and pitiful Uchiha? My plans are just beginning to unfold." The Kyuubi looked at Madara with anger in its eyes, but it didn't say a word. "Naruto will be in such a terrible state of mind after tonight," Madara said. "But the best part about it is that he'll be seeking the truth. And I will give it to him, and earn his trust. With his new eyes, Naruto will be sure to grow powerful. And with these eyes, I will use him to burn Konoha to the ground." Then, slowly, Madara left the realm, getting ready to take over Naruto's mind while he was unconscious. Outside, when the deed was over, Itachi shook. Even so, he knew the transplant had worked because Shisui's dark eyes turned blue right after he was done, and Itachi could see the huge amount of chakra surrounding the eyes, which was helping to heal them. He buried Shisui's body under a bigger tree for the next 10 minutes, with tears running down his face the whole time. He could no longer see with his Mangekyo Sharingan, but he could still feel the huge power inside him. Also, the pain was still new. After another 5 minutes of sitting at the grave that he had dug himself, he heard someone stepping behind him. When he turned around, Naruto was standing behind him with his arms crossed. He didn't even have to ask to know it wasn't Naruto, he could feel the boy's evil and dark chakra. His blue eyes turned into a red Sharingan as soon as he looked into Naruto's. When Madara spoke, his voice mixed with Naruto's, making the boy sound almost evil. "You've done a great deed," he said. "You have proved yourself ready for the massacre." Itachi laughed at the remark and then turned back to the grave. It looked like a kunai was buried deep in the tree trunk. Itachi had killed Shisui with this kunai and cut out both of his eyes. His answer, "I didn't choose to kill Shisui," made Madara raise an eyebrow in interest. Itachi went on. Before Shisui died, he somehow managed to unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan. The pain he felt must have been enough. And he used an incredible technique to control me. He forced me to kill him and give you his eyes instead of mine. Madara's eyes got bigger. Naruto's face slowly turned into a smile. Koto Amatsukami. One of the potential techniques that a Mangekyo can unlock or master. This power is incredible. My own eyes could never unlock this technique. The ability to completely submit someone to your will. Madara began to laugh. Things were going really well. Have you healed your wounds? Itachi gave a nod and looked down at his chest. He had stopped the bleeding, closed up the wound, and wrapped it up with somewhat weak healing jutsu. It hurt a lot, but it would do for now. Madara closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and looked up at the bright full moon in the sky. The Sharingan began to spin when he opened them, and then it changed into a Mangekyo Sharingan. The Mangekyo that Itachi saw was different from the one that Shisui had unlocked. It was Madara's own eternal Mangekyo being used through Naruto's body. Then it's time. After 30 minutes. With a groan, Sasuke woke up. Besides having a painful headache, he had no idea what was going on. He knew he was outside on the ground before he opened his eyes. He could feel the grass and dirt around him. He slowly remembered that he and his team were on their first C-rank mission. They were leaving to hold down a group of bandits between Kumo and Konoha. He woke up, rubbed his head, and slowly opened his eyes to look around. He first noticed that it was nighttime, it was dark, and there was a full moon in the sky above him. Was he awake at night? Yeah, that would be a pain. He needed all the sleep he could get. It was great. He could remember now. They were on their way to town before it got too dark through the night, when there was an explosion. He must have been knocked out. He turned to check on his other teammates to make sure they were okay. To his great surprise, all he found was Hinata lying next to him. Naruto and Shisui were not to be found. What might have happened? Why did Naruto and Shisui leave them? Was there a chance that they might have taken her? Then why wouldn't the bad guys take him and Hinata too? Why? When he stood up and started to think about everything, he saw something terrible that he hadn't seen before. There was blood all over the ground around him. The ground was still wet with blood right next to his side. He choked. What might have happened? Naruto had fallen right next to him and been knocked out. At that moment, he saw a straight line of blood coming from the area next to him. He walked along it slowly and scared because he didn't know where it would lead him. He looked around and saw that the forest area looked like it had just been through a battle. There were burn marks all over the place where kunai were stuck into trees. Sasuke made a promise to himself. Something awful was going on in the pit of his stomach. What took place here was not good at all. When he saw the end of the blood trail, he stopped. Much like where he had begun, there was a spot on the ground that was wet with blood. It was not long ago. Whose blood was it? When he saw a mound of dirt off to the side, under a tree, by its trunk, his heart almost stopped. He walked over to the grave and saw a kunai carved into the tree trunk above it. There was writing at the tree's base, which was above the grave. Shisui Uchiha is buried here. Who gave their lives for his village? My best friend. Sasuke was so shocked that he fell to his knees. No. The Uchiha compound. The Mangekyo Sharingan was a more advanced version of the Uchiha's Sharingan. Itachi already knew this, but Madara chose to start from the beginning when he taught it to him on the way to the Uchiha compound. For some reason, Itachi thought it was odd that he was learning so much from what looked like Naruto. He knew that Madara was awake, but it looked like Naruto was talking and explaining this interesting subject to him. It turned out that Naruto, not Sasuke, would be hurt the most by this massacre. The Uchiha was both of their families, but Naruto would have to find out one day that it was his body that made the massacre possible. Like Itachi, his hands would be stained with Uchiha blood. They both didn't want to do it. Itachi often wished he could just turn around and run away to let the Hokage know he couldn't do it. To let his dad know what was going to happen. The Uchiha might be able to just hide in another village and run away. That is not what the Uchiha would do. He tried to persuade his dad that the best thing to do was to run away and hide. They would not have to die, and Konoha would not have to be taken over by an enemy village. His father told him that would just mean avoiding the problem. His father told him that the Uchiha would clean up the village or die trying. He had no idea that giving up would mean they would be killed without a fair chance. Itachi couldn't even tell his dad right now. Shisui's curse driven him toward the Uchiha, making his body want to kill it. He had to kill the Uchiha no matter what. Madara laughed at the truth of it. Madara thought that Itachi's need to kill a clan would be a great chance to learn how to use Amaterasu. Itachi had made Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi available. Madara said there were 4 known ways to get into the Mangekyo Sharingan, 2 good ways and 2 bad ways. 2 general techniques could be unlocked for each way to get the Mangekyo Sharingan. This made a total of 8 general techniques. The bad ways to get to the Mangekyo weren't always bad, they just required a lot of pain and loss. But Uchiha would often kill people close to them to make this feeling strong enough to evolve the Mangekyo. At the time Madara learned all of this, they had narrowed it down to 2 specific ways. One of them was killing your best friend. By killing your best friend and enduring a terrible suffering, Madara said, you unlock the 2 techniques Tsukuyomi and Amaterasu, both which in turn cause terrible suffering. I also used this technique to unlock the Mangekyo, however, my brother, Izuna Uchiha, used the other evil way to unlock his. We decided on this because together, he and I would balance out and become incredibly powerful, having 4 Mangekyo techniques between the 2 of us. Itachi asked, almost afraid to hear the answer, what did your brother do? Madara laughed in a scary way. He made an incredible sacrifice for the Uchiha clan, he killed his only son. Itachi was sick and horrified. It was a sacrifice needed in order to make the Uchiha clan great, Madara said. Because my brother and I both suffered, we were able to make our clan just as strong as Senju, which is led by the 2 Senju brothers. My brother, because he suffered more than I did, unlocked a more powerful and miserable set of techniques. They are similar to yours. One requires eye contact and the other destroys whatever the eye sees. The first technique, Fujin, can cut through and pierce any armor, and the second, Raijin, makes a person suffer the most pain and agony possible until they die. When I took my brother's eyes and used them to unlock the eternal Mangekyo, I got both of his 2 eye techniques. I am the best Uchiha warrior because my eyes hold the 4 basic Mangekyo techniques of pain and destruction. And yes, any pair of eyes can unlock any technique. But trying to master water-type techniques if your chakra nature is only earth would be like that. Aside from the original 8, there are several Mangekyo techniques that any user can learn and master, though I am one of the only ones in the Uchiha's history to do so. You can discover those for yourself when you look upon the Uchiha tablet in our secret meeting room with the Mangekyo Sharingan activated. As Konoha came into view, Itachi wanted to ask more, but he couldn't because his throat felt tight and he was shaking with worry. This was really taking place. He was going to kill someone in cold blood tonight. When they got to the village gates, the guards let them in without any problems because both Itachi and Naruto were known to be Konoha ninja. When they went through the many old seals that protected Konoha, it showed that Genjutsu wasn't keeping them hidden. They used shunshuns and jumped from roof to get straight to the Uchiha compound. They quickly got there. The moon was high in the sky late at night. Itachi thought he could almost feel something bad in the air. There wasn't much of a battle plan. Madara told Itachi that he would fight with him and make sure that no one got away. Also, Itachi had to use Tsukuyomi on the guard at the Uchiha clan's gates. Itachi-san, the guard said as they got close to the gates, pointing to Itachi. In the same way, he nodded at Naruto. Naruto-san. Itachi quickly changed his Sharingan into the Mangekyo Sharingan by putting a huge amount of chakra into his eyes. The guard's eyes got bigger with fear and shock when he turned around to look at Itachi again because he was still. But it was too late. Itachi said under his breath, Tsukuyomi, and then used his left eye to activate the jutsu. From the moment he began the technique, everything stopped. When the technique took so much chakra out of him, Itachi had to hold back a gasp. He was a little shocked. Even so, the results were amazing. This was his truth. As long as he held the jutsu, he could do anything. Itachi-san, the guard called out again, and this time his voice was full of worry. As long as his Sharingan wasn't turned on, he had no idea that he was under one of the strongest genjutsu in the world. Your eyes, what type of Sharingan is that? Itachi was in a hurry to finish. With almost every type of Mangekyo Sharingan, a technique that required eye contact could be unlocked. This technique gave the user complete control over another person's mind in a certain way. When he made eye contact with someone, Madara told him that Shisui's Koto Amatsukami let the user enter that person's brain and take out any information he wanted. He could also put his own thoughts and ideas there. Shisui got into Itachi's head and rewired him so that he would always kill Itachi and the Uchiha clan. When Madara made eye contact with someone, his Raijin let him take control of their brain and turn on all of their pain receptors, making them feel the worst pain ever. Itachi's Tsukuyomi, on the other hand, let him take over someone else's mind and control their whole reality as long as the technique worked. There is also a part of the body called the autonomic nervous system that controls the brain. If the Mangekyo made the brain think that the body had died, it would turn off the central nervous system. Your brain would stop beating your heart if it thought you were dead. In other words, all Itachi had to do to make the man's brain shut off was kill the guard in this made-up world. Madara told him to be careful when using this method on Sharingan users. The brain would know that the body wasn't really dying because the Sharingan would be able to recognize the genjutsu. The person who got hit would still feel the pain of everything, and at some point, that pain would be enough to shut down the brain. But that could take hours and a lot of chakra from Itachi. People who didn't use Sharingan, on the other hand, could just look them in the eyes, trap them in his controlled reality, freeze their body, and hit them in the chest with a kunai. Their brains would die. In real life, though, it would look like Itachi just stared the man to death. In nightmares, a lot of people die, and depending on the dream, they might not even know it's a nightmare. However, since dreams are controlled by the brain knows that the person is just asleep, even if the person isn't aware of it. When the Mangekyo or Tsukuyomi takes over the brain, however, it knows that the body is not asleep and tells the Sharingan to kill it. Brains that feel like someone's head has been cut off will feel cut off from the heart, which will stop the heart from beating. Itachi was scared by how strong the technique was. He only had to look at someone to kill them. There was a point where they would break, even if they had a Sharingan or some other dujutsu that helped them see that they were trapped in a genjutsu. So, when Itachi threw a kunai at the guard inside Tsukuyomi, the guard couldn't avoid it and fell to the ground, looking like he was dead. The guard fell to the ground dead in the same way that Itachi had shown him when he released the technique. If someone didn't immediately send a huge amount of chakra into the guard to stop his genjutsu on his mind, he would die soon from not getting enough oxygen to his brain. When Madara laughed next to Itachi, he woke up from his trance. "That was good for your first try," he told her as he walked over and felt the guard's pulse, which wasn't there. "But it only took you 10 seconds. Don't think it's impossible to change someone else's reality. You can change how their brain sees everything, even time. Once you master Tsukuyomi, you'll be able to make a second in the real world seem like a week in your controlled world. 2 Uchiha have now been killed tonight. Now is the time to finish the rest." Itachi and Madara walked into the compound together. The first main street was empty. Most people were already asleep in bed. There were probably a few small shops still open, but if they were lucky, they could kill everyone while they slept before they even had a chance to open. "No," as if he could read Itachi's mind, Madara yelled, "The Uchiha are a proud race of warriors." He smiled. "They will die in battle. Now, are you sure that all of them are in this compound?" "I'm sure of it," Itachi said, still feeling like he wasn't in his body. Fugaku called back the whole clan from missions outside the body. He had his coup plan for this week. Madara bowed and then jumped high into the air using his chakra to help him. When he could see the whole compound below him, he clapped his hands together and yelled in a loud, booming, chakra-enhanced voice that everyone in the compound could hear. "Yes, please." Right away, a ring of black fire appeared around the whole compound and went all the way around it. The flames rose high into the air and trapped the clan inside their deadly ring. When Madara landed, he dropped to one knee and breathed heavily. He had to take a moment to calm down before he could stand up. No matter how high they jump, the flames will catch them, he told Itachi. It took me years to learn how to control my Amaterasu. Now is the time to get back at this selfish and unfortunate clan. I want to see how weak the Uchiha have become. It will likely be 30 minutes before the Anbu gets here. Move quickly. When you're done killing everyone, meet me at Naruto's house. Forest. Awaken. Hey Hinata, wake up. Slowly, Hinata woke up, her eyes fixed on the strange image of Sasuke. She could feel herself being slightly shaken by him, and her head hurt. What was going on? What had happened? Let's go back to Konoha. When she finally woke up, she saw that Sasuke was holding her while she lay on the ground and was crying. Go back to Konoha, she asked. Why? She asked. She was on a mission with Naruto-kun and Shisui-sensei, and she finally remembered what had happened. The explosion had knocked out her whole team. She quickly stood up next to Sasuke and looked around. Naruto and Shisui were nowhere to be found, and blood was sitting on the ground near where they were sitting. She looked at Sasuke with fear in her eyes. Before she could ask a question, Sasuke said, "It's bad." Hinata closed her eyes in tears as she tried to figure out what bad meant. We need to go back to Konoha. We're not safe here. Shisui is dead, and I have no idea where Naruto is. We need to figure out what happened. Hinata couldn't breathe because Shisui was dead and Naruto wasn't there. And what confuses me even more, Sasuke said in a low, dangerous voice, is that Itachi was here. He then pointed to the grave where Shisui's body was lying. He was the one who buried Shisui, based on what I can tell from the writing on his grave. We need to go back to Konoha, Sasuke said. We have to tell the Hokage, we have to know what happened. Later on, Uchiha compound. Get him. Kill the traitor. It wasn't useful, they couldn't do anything against him. Before he got his Mangekyo, he and Shisui were the strongest Uchiha in the whole clan. But now that he has it, they all look weak in comparison to him. The military police were split up and were swarming him and Naruto in different parts of the compound. The Uchiha were a military ninja clan, so almost all of their members knew how to fight. It wasn't killing them that was hard, it was having to kill all of them. Madara was able to help him with that by using his eternal eye. 3 Uchiha Jonin charged at him, but before they could get close, they were engulfed in his black flames and burned up right there on the ground. A kunai flew at him from the right, so he jumped back to avoid it. He then fought back with a lightning-fast kunai of his own, and both of them went through the store owner who had tried to surprise him. He held up the fire seal and yelled, "Kaden, Gokakyu no Jutsu." A fireball the size of a small house was sent down the street, killing any Uchiha that were in its way. It then hit a building and went off, making a huge explosion. He was surprised when a strong wave of chakra hit him and made him look to the side. A huge skeletal figure covered in red chakra stood tall in the air. It wasn't hurt by fire attacks, and with a wave of its arm, it could destroy a whole row of houses. Itachi felt a shiver. Madara's Mangekyo techniques had to be the one that did it. He shook his head and looked back at the group of ninjas who were getting ready to attack him. They didn't have time to waste because the Anbu were going to come right away to check out the fires around the Uchiha compound. Finally, there was just one Uchiha left in the street, his arms crossed. Itachi rolled his eyes and wondered how he had gotten away from his fireball. The man had spiky Uchiha hair that grew out a little more than usual. He seemed a bit older than Itachi. Even though the man was wearing a strange mask, Itachi could tell that his Crimson Sharingan was on, so he didn't want to waste chakra on Tsukuyomi on him. Amaterasu. In an instant, the man turned into black flames. Itachi turned around and started walking to the right-hand house that was closest to him. Since it was his uncle's house, he felt he had to kill the man in person if he could. The killings had been going on for 15 minutes, but most of the houses were empty, and the Uchiha were all fighting in the street. Itachi hadn't seen his uncle yet, so he might still be inside unless Madara had killed him. When he opened the sliding door to the house, he quickly looked around and sighed when he saw that his uncle wasn't there. The adrenaline was still going strong in Itachi's body. He didn't have time for this anyway. He quickly left the house and was about to run to the next street when he noticed something odd out of the corner of his eye. As he stood there with his arms crossed, the man in the mask that he had used Amaterasu on was still there. He looked at Itachi with a blank stare. Itachi couldn't believe he had made it through the attack. He knew the man wasn't a copy or a replacement when his Sharingan was turned on. But the man yelled out himself before he could attack again. "Who are you, and why are you attacking the Uchiha clan? And who's your associate?" After calming down, Itachi took off his mask and was about to answer when he noticed something odd. He was Itachi Uchiha, the most famous member of the clan. How could this Uchiha not know about him? "My name is Itachi," he said slowly. "And I am destroying the Uchiha clan as a test of my strength, along with none other than Madara Uchiha." The man looked annoyed. Right after a moment, he couldn't stop laughing. Itachi wasn't ready for this response, but he didn't wait for the man to finish. As he looked at the man again with sharp eyes, he focused his chakra and yelled, "Amaterasu." Itachi let out a sigh of relief as the laughing Uchiha turned into black flame again. He didn't leave right away. Instead, he chose to stay and watch to make sure that. A voice from behind him said, "What an amazing homecoming this is." Once Itachi realized what was going on, his eyes grew wide. The man wasn't burning in front of him anymore. He had appeared behind him so quickly that Itachi's Sharingan couldn't even catch it. But how? He could not get away from the fact that Amaterasu had hit him. The man grabbed Itachi's shoulder before he could do anything. The world seemed to disappear all at once, swirling around until there was nothing but darkness. Shisui's house is in the Uchiha compound. Itachi fell to what felt like a wooden floor and gasped for air. All of a sudden, sound and light came back into his world. He straightened his back and looked up. Naruto was sitting on the ground with his legs crossed, talking to the Uchiha with the spiked hair who had been set on fire by Amaterasu but miraculously didn't die. What was going on? Itachi asked. Who are you?" This made both Naruto and the unknown man pay attention to him. But when the man with the spiked hair turned to look at him, Itachi saw that the mask the man was wearing was strange. It was bright orange and had a spiral shape with only one eye in it. "This man used to be one of my students," Madara said, mixing his voice with Naruto's while still being in charge. "Before, of course, the damned fourth Hokage sealed me away into this brat." "How old are you now?" It looked like the man in the mask scratched his head a lot. Let's see here. I think I'm 26. And you say that Itachi here is only 17 years old, almost 18, so that makes sense why I don't know him. He was what, 3 years old when I left Konoha? Damn, that makes me feel old. I certainly don't feel old, though. Madara laughed. You certainly don't act old, either. Why did you come to Konoha? I thought that you were going around the world, searching for it. Rising from the ground behind both the man and Madara, Itachi tried to figure out what was going on. They should have been in the middle of a massacre. I did find it, the man said. He showed Madara his arm by pulling up the left sleeve of his black robes. He didn't know exactly what he was showing Madara from his point of view, but it seemed important enough for Madara to think he had just seen a ghost. I've been spending some years in Kiri, reading through the Mizukage's secret library, trying to find it. I was eventually discovered though. I had to end up killing the Mizukage and most of the 7 swordsmen, but luckily I had found it by then. I've been honing my skills, traveling the world, but I decided that I would stop by Konoha and say hello to my old buddies here, but guess what? Little Itachi over there ruined my homecoming by killing off my entire clan. After the man showed Madara his arm, he didn't seem to care about what he said. He told her, Toby, in a low, scary voice. Tell me, how strong are you? People said the man's name was Toby. He put his hand to his chin and looked like he was thinking about the question a lot. He finally gave her a smile and said, almost stronger than you were. Itachi finally spoke up and tried to understand what was going on better by saying, wait. Is the massacre over? Madara said, yes, everyone is dead, except for your parents. We've left them alive for you. Hurry, my flames are no longer surrounding the village, so the Anbu could arrive any minute. They've surely heard the commotion by now. He took a deep breath. After giving him a nod, Madara walked out of the room without a word and went to get his last kill. Toby sat down in front of Madara and looked at him through his orange mask as soon as he left. Madara didn't have to look at Toba's face to know that he had become serious all of a sudden. The boy, who was really a man now, seemed to have some kind of bipolar disorder that was hard to control. He was normally happy and silly, but after that event all those years ago, he seemed to go back and forth between being sad and dark and being his usual silly self. Seriously, Toby said, his voice sounding lower than it really was, I came here tonight to kill the Uchiha clan and get back at them for the pain they caused me, and to see an old friend. Madara's eyes got narrow. He was sure that Toby was strong enough to do what he said he would do. So now that you have power, he said, you're going to go around and kill all of those who caused you pain. I hope I'm not on your list. The room was tense. Madara's hands were on his lap, and his fingers were flexed. It looked like the whole house could explode in black flame at any moment. No, Toby said, calming things down, but his voice was still dark. You are still my teacher, and I still owe you everything. I came here to Konoha to find you as well. I had heard that the fourth Hokage had defeated both you and Lord Kyuubi, but I didn't truly believe it. Madara spoke up, his voice still low and dangerous. I wasn't beaten by the Hokage. Minato Namikaze isn't as good as Hashirama. He only used Kinjutsu and not Fuinjutsu, he said, tapping Naruto on the stomach to make his point clear. That made Toby laugh. I too met with the fourth Hokage. And though I have never fought Hashirama myself, I'd argue that Minato was the strongest Hokage. He was faster than me. It seems no matter how powerful you become, no matter how strong your ninjutsu or genjutsu or there is always some sort of fuinjutsu that can be used to defeat you. That's how ninjas do things, Madara agreed. It's always been that way, since the gods blessed both the sage and his brother with equal but different power. And you were still but a student when you faced Minato. They didn't say anything for a moment. Toby finally asked a question that had been bothering him for a while. He told Madara out loud, there's something I don't understand. I met the Amekage, the leader of this, Akatsuki, and he has the Rinnegan. How did he awaken such a power? How could anyone awaken such a power who isn't related to the Uchiha or Senju? Madara said yes, because that was a question he had been trying to figure out on his own. I didn't know myself before I was sealed within this child, he said. But then I actually met him once, within Naruto's subconscious. He confirmed that he was the child of that infamous couple. You wouldn't know about it since the Senju massacre happened just before you were born. To sum it up, the Amekage is the child of a Uchiha woman who ran away from Konoha to aim. Tebi asked, why did she run away? Her life was in danger because she had fallen in love with a Senju and married him in secret, but neither of the clans knew about it. When they could no longer keep their secret, the clans decided that both should be killed for clearly breaking their own rules. The village couldn't do anything because it was made up of more than just the Senju and Uchiha. The village council had agreed to let each ninja clan keep their own set of rules so that the village could borrow their ninja for their own military. The council, especially Danzo, was very smart about what they did. You already know that the goal of each village's council is to get rid of all Kekkei Genkai. Our council was going to start with the Senju. Taking advantage of the situation, they were able to get the Senju male to kill the whole Senju clan by promising to protect him, his wife, and their child. They told them they could leave the village and live together without any problems. But Danzo had him killed as soon as he killed his clan. Everyone in the village thought that the Senju genius had killed the clan out of anger and to protect himself, but his wife knew the truth, so Danzo was going to kill her next. She ran as far away from the village as possible, but Danzo hunted her down and eventually killed her. I had thought that was the end of that tale, but apparently she had managed to give birth to her child in aim. No one knew of the child's fate, not even me. Toby was shocked. He slowly tapped the wooden floor below him as he tried to take in this new information. So what you read of the Uchiha tablet is true then. In order to achieve the Rinnegan and become like the sage, you have to combine the Kekkei Genkai of the Uchiha and the Senju. Madara smiled and nodded. That's correct. It appears to be the last work of the sage and his brother. As the tablet told us, the sage had 2 children before his brother had distributed Kekkei Genkai throughout the land. He couldn't choose which son to give all of his power to, and since they both hated each other, he had his brother split his power into two. To one son he gave his ultimate spiritual chakra, and to the other, his ultimate physical chakra. Senju and Uchiha. They hated each other still, but their powers were balanced and so they were unable to kill each other. It seemed as if no one would ever have the sage's power again. That's when Toby leaned forward and put the pieces together. So when the tablet told us that only when my sons can live peace and harmony will my power be awakened, it meant that. Madara nodded and finished for him. Yes, the sage planned that the Rinnegan would be awakened when his children, Senju and Uchiha, and their descendants ended their hatred and found peace. Or rather, when they came together again, and a Senju was able to marry and have children with Uchiha. That's why I was unable to unlock the Rinnegan by simply stealing Hashirama's DNA. The Rinnegan had already been awakened in the Akatsuki leader. I didn't understand what that meant until the Amikage confirmed that his parents were both Senju and Uchiha. Through their marriage, though they were cursed and killed for it, they were able to represent the Uchiha and Senju loving each other again, and through their child, the sage was reborn. Toby bowed his head and kept taking it all in. His mask made him smile as he thought about how smart the sage was and how much he admired his brother, the Uzumaki patriarch, who had been given the power of Fuinjutsu and the language of chakra and could give or take away power. The tablet said that he was the one who planned how chakra should work and how Kekkei Genkai was passed down from one generation to the next. But a painful truth was left out. What are you going to do about the Amikage then? Madara smiled, eager to tell someone about his plan. I will kill him, or rather, Naruto here will kill him for me. This boy is the perfect vessel for me to be trapped in. He is an Uzumaki. Not only that, but through the work of the fourth Hokage, he has managed to absorb my spiritual chakra, my Kekkei Genkai, into his own. If he were to acquire Senju DNA like I once did, and kill the Amikage, he would be like a combination of the sage and his brother. There was a chance that Toby didn't fully understand what this meant. It hit him all of a sudden. Are you thinking that if Naruto were to obtain this power, that you would be able to use him for the Moon's Eye? Yes. And if worse comes to happen, I'll be able to use the Rinnegan's power through Naruto to destroy the seal containing me. Somewhere else as Fugaku sat down on the ground with his wife and tears in their eyes, he said, so you lied to us twice. Itachi could feel his heart beating faster. This was it, the moment he had been most afraid of. He had to kill his parents. He didn't want to take out the Uchiha family. He could clearly hear Shisui's order, which made his body move. He had to kill his parents no matter what. Father. Mother. He tried to start as he walked slowly toward them. He had no idea how to start. These past few months have been hard for him and his father, but Itachi knew deep down that he still loved his parents. He was sure that the coup they were planning to carry out was the right thing to do. He just didn't know how to tell them that. We know, Itachi, his mother said, giving him a loving smile. Itachi's eyes got bigger, first out of shock and then out of anger. What did they know about what he went through? Who could have known that he was responsible for the deaths of so many people, that the lives of thousands of people hanged in the balance? They couldn't know what it was like to kill your best friend, to gain such great power, and to have to use it on everyone you grew up with. How could they? Don't wait, Itachi, his father told his mother, seeing that Itachi's eyes were filled with worry. We knew this could happen. This is the way you chose to go. Now that the Uchiha clan is gone, the corruption in Konoha will live on. No matter what you say to explain it, you caused this. But our pain will only last a moment, while yours will last forever. While Itachi stayed close to his parents, tears started to fall from his eyes. He felt so guilty and sad. His father finally spoke up when Itachi stood in front of him with his katana drawn. Itachi, promise me one thing. At least tell me you won't kill Sasuke and Naruto. It wasn't your brother's fault. Itachi held the sword up and pointed it at his father with a shaking hand. His own vision was cloudy from tears, and the picture of his father and mother on their knees was shaking in front of him. He was able to say, of course. One last time, he looked back and forth between his parents. His mother was also crying in the background, but she could keep her cool and smile. His mother told him in a sweet voice, Itachi, you may not agree with us, but as your parents, we're still proud of you. You've always been kind. With his hands still on his sword, Itachi let out a choked sob. It had to be done. For Shisui, to keep Konoha safe. Last but not least, he could no longer hold back. Shisui's will was done through him. The Uchiha compound. As soon as Sasuke saw the Uchiha compound, he knew something was wrong. He could feel something evil in the air at night. There was a problem. It was too quiet. Even though it was very late at night, there was no sound at all as he got closer to the compound. There must be people at a late-night bar or something. One more thing he noticed was that the compound looked very dark. As he walked quickly up to it, he couldn't see any lights coming from any of the buildings. He and Hinata quickly went back to Konoha at the fastest speed they could both muster after getting their bearings. When they got to the village, Hinata stayed behind to tell the guard what had happened. Naruto was gone and Shisui was dead. The gate guard and Hinata would then go to either the Hokage or the Anbu. He knew again that Shisui had been killed in their ambush, and he felt a strange twist in his stomach. He was feeling excited as he tried to figure out what was going on, which took the place of sadness. It was likely that he would break down as soon as he stopped moving and sat down to think about what had happened. He had never lost someone close to him before, and the thought of never seeing Shisui again broke his heart. He turned his head away. He had to make sure Naruto was okay before he could worry about Shisui too. Naruto may have woken up before them and tried to wake them up but failed. He may have already left for the village. The village guard said that he had just switched jobs with the previous guard and didn't know if Naruto had come back. That also didn't explain how his brother could have been at the ambush. He thought everything was so hard to understand that. When Sasuke finally got to the base of the Uchiha clan, he stopped moving. There should have been a guard there, but instead he saw a man lying on the wall, obviously dead. He looked away from the dead man and toward the main street of the Uchiha compound. For a moment, his heart seemed to stop. There was death everywhere. There were fires and damage to buildings and homes. In the street, bodies were lying around, and blood was on the ground and the walls. He walked slowly into the compound, taking in all the death around him in silence. His walk turned into a jog, and then it turned into a sprint. He desperately yelled for help as he ran through the compound's streets, but he knew deep down that no one would hear him. Some houses looked like they weren't damaged at all, but the end result was the same. Everyone was asleep, and it was always quiet. Even though he didn't know where he was going, he quickly found himself in front of his own house. He wasn't sure why, but he had a feeling that the answer was inside him. They had to still be alive. Itachi had to be alive after all. He had to be alive still. He shook his head and ran into his house as tears started to fall from his eyes. He was scared to go through and see what was on the other side, but he had to. He had to deal with it. What he saw changed his life for good. They were both lying on the ground next to each other in a pool of blood in the first main room of his house. The pool was still slowly growing. It was like he was whispering, "Mother. Father," as if they could hear him and answer. He was sure they wouldn't, though. They would never pick up when he called again. He slowly looked up at the person standing over the bodies of his parents as his eyes shook. Itachi Uchiha stood in front of him wearing all of his Anbu armor except for his mask. He looked off into the distance with sad red eyes. That night, Sasuke felt a small bit of hope for the first time. There wasn't anyone strong enough to kill his brother after killing Shisui, his clan, and his parents. He wasn't by himself. Itachi would know everything. When Sasuke slowly called out to his brother, "Ni-san," his voice was sad and desperate as he begged for help. "Mother and father, what?" As quickly as Sasuke's hope began to grow, it was cruelly put out. In a blur, Itachi threw a kunai at Sasuke so quickly that he didn't even have time to blink. The crash in the trees behind him and the cut that appeared out of nowhere in his shoulders might not have even made him notice. Sasuke grabbed his shoulder in pain and shock. Itachi was standing over the bodies of his recently killed parents while holding a katana that was dripping with fresh blood. This was something he had missed before. His eyes got really big in shock. "It's not possible." Itachi told him coldly, "You're a fool, little brother." He walked over to him slowly, stepping over their parents. "Itachi." When Sasuke's voice came back, he was finally able to yell at him. "What the heck happened? What did you do?" When the ex-Anbu captain got to his brother, he stopped. "If you wish to know, then I will show you." Sasuke didn't have to think about what Itachi meant. At that very moment, Itachi's eyes went from being the normal bright red of the Sharingan to something darker and worse. "Tsukuyomi." Right away, Sasuke got down on his knees, screamed in pain, and put his hands over his eyes and forehead. Itachi couldn't help but jump when he saw what he saw. In the real world, only a second had passed, but he knew that Sasuke had just been through all of Itachi's killing and even more. Itachi made sure that in his illusion, he didn't show that Madara was controlling Naruto. While he was on the ground crying out in pain, Sasuke kept his eyes closed. Itachi finally couldn't take it any longer, so he quickly walked past Sasuke and left the house. He had to leave the town. They had killed the last Uchiha, so the job was done. Through Tsukuyomi, Sasuke had seen Itachi do it. Itachi would turn bad and be hated by everyone in the village. When Itachi turned around because he heard something behind him, he saw Sasuke stumbling out of the house with one hand still over his eye and hurt. Itachi may have been shocked that Sasuke was still awake and able to walk after the Mangekyo, but what really caught his attention was the deep red glow coming from the eye he had left open with his hand. The shareholder. I'm going to kill you." When he heard him, Sasuke screamed and crashed into Itachi. He tripped and fell before he could get to Itachi in the street. "You'll pay for what you've done." Slowly, Itachi moved forward until he was standing on his hands and knees over Sasuke. He then knelt down so that he was level with his brother. From inside the house, Itachi had seen pain and fear. But through Sasuke's undeveloped Sharingan, he saw hate and determination. Itachi just told him, "Then get stronger." His voice was low and quiet. "Get stronger if you want to kill me. When your eyes are as strong as mine, come face me. Get back at the Uchiha. Live. Do whatever you have to do to stay alive. Hold on to your life. Goodbye, buddy." Itachi's tears on his face were the last thing Sasuke saw or felt before passing out. Before that, he had lightly poked Itachi on the forehead. "After, what are you going to do now? The Uchiha have been wiped out, and the village will probably soon be locked down. Abu is also coming, I can feel it." The Uchiha in the mask got up from the ground in front of Naruto and brushed off his clothes. When he snapped his fingers, a small, dark vortex appeared in the air for half a second. This made a robe appear in the air. He caught it before it hit the ground and threw it around himself. "I'm going to keep an eye on Akatsuki for now," he said. He rolled his right shoulder and rubbed his right arm, as if to get blood to that area. The Amikage grows stronger by the day, and his ninja force already has enough power to take over the world. When he heard this, Madara raised his eyebrows while Naruto was still moving. "Explain." "Akatsuki is a military village that is unlike any other. Besides the growing number of ninjas who have escaped, he is directly supervised by 9 captains, all of whom are S-ranked and very dangerous. Since he hasn't mastered the Rinnegan yet, I think I can beat the Amikage right now. But I couldn't fight him with his captains. I need to keep an eye on what they're doing to see if they're going to get in the way of ours. Madara, the Moon's Eye plan was first your idea, and I plan to see it through." Madara finally got up too. Outside, they could hear people screaming and yelling. The Anbu had finally arrived at the scene. "All right. Obito, I'm glad to see that you are still with us." When the man in the mask heard the name, he tensed up, but then he calmed down and snapped his fingers again, making another small vortex appear in front of him. "That's not my name, not anymore." The portal then sucked him up, and he was no longer seen. Madara was left alone in the room. The door broke almost right away, and all of a sudden, at least 10 Anbu were all around him. Madara gave himself a small smile and then let go of Naruto. The day was over, and Naruto's real story had begun. The Uchiha had been killed. He stopped being in charge of Naruto's body and went back into the boy's mind. The boy's eyes turned back to a dark blue color before rolling to the back of his head as he hit the ground.
So this was it for today. I will continue this story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.